So, like, do you have
Yeah, the
one?
newer ones.
Like, my allergist has a really good one. It works great. Like, shot people just check themselves in, and there's this tinnitus, and I really like it. I should look at what it is.
Calling to order the Monday, July 16th, 2018 regular meeting of the 37th Council of the City of Berkeley. Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Here.
Councilmember Blanchard.
Here.
Councilmember Dean.
Here.
Councilmember Gavin.
Here.
Councilmember Hennon.
Here.
Councilmember Stedman. Here. And Mayor Turbrack.
Here. First order of business is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Motion to approve.
Support. Motion approved by Councilmember Hennon with support from Mayor Pro Tem Baker. Any changes or additions? Seeing none, Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll?
Blanchard.
Yes.
Dean.
Yes.
Gavin.
Yes.
Hennon.
Yes.
Stedman.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
And Turbrack.
Yes. The agenda has been approved. Please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the pledge. With us today is Reverend Tal Sullivan.
Let's pray. God in heaven, we thank you for the privilege of coming to you. You've invited us to approach you and to invoke your name. Thank you, God, for the blessings that we have in our nation and in this city in particular. God, from those with the least to those with the most, we are a blessed people, and I ask that you would remind us all of the great blessings that we have. Help us to manage those blessings well and to use them to be a blessing to other people. And Lord, I pray for our leaders in this city. We pray, God, for our mayor and our council members and their families, for all who serve our city day after day, in volunteer and in paid positions. God, we ask your blessing on each of them. You know the needs that they have, and you are big enough and able to meet those needs. And so we ask for wisdom for them. We ask that in this council meeting right now that your presence would be felt and that you would give wisdom and direction and help us to continue to be a great place to live, a place where families grow up in health and are loved. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Turn the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That brings us to citizens' comments, when you may present your thoughts on issues that are not included on tonight's agenda. Council members will not engage you in discussion, but if your concern needs to be addressed by a member of city staff or department of the city, please sign your name on the sheet provided at the clerk's table. You may speak on a specific agenda item when it is being considered. When you come to the microphone, please state your name and city of residence.
Gosh, I thought there'd be people in front of me. Vivian Carmody with the DDA. I'm here because I want to tell you guys about our Better Life Bag project, which some of you know who've been kind of working with us through this process. It's been going on for a while, but last year the DDA board determined that they were going to try to kind of walk the talk of buying locally for their promotional items. Previously, for some of our events, we were buying eco bags, but they were purchased overseas from China. So we took it upon ourselves to try and figure out what, if it was possible, to find a bag that was affordable, that we could manufacture locally, and we did. So we partnered with Better Life Bags, which is a small company in Hamtramck who hires women who are challenged by the workforce. It might be language barriers. It might be women who just aren't allowed to work outside of the home. Anyway, Rebecca Smith, who owns the company, hires these women, and they come in and they make bags. They make beautiful bags. So I reached out to, they make bags that are much nicer than these that I'm going to show you. All these are very, very nice. But I reached out to Rebecca and I said, hey, so what do you think? I mean, I have this idea of doing a basic canvas bag. Do you think this is something you guys might be able to help us with? And she was very excited, and so we were able to create this partnership. We determined what the bags were going to cost. I knew that we were going to have to go get some corporate sponsorship, so I reached out to Citizens Bank of Michigan, who gave us sponsor dollars, and last week we rolled out our branded Downtown Berkeley bag, which is all local. So you can see Better Life bags. Every single bag is unique because they all have these individual little printed handles. They're all hand sewn, hand cut by these women in Hamtramck. You might recognize the malt mural from our mural that the DDA had painted down on Elwyn's last week, printed by armadillos. So in every one of the bags, you'll find there is a little postcard that tells the Better Life bag story and the DDA story and shows, all of our partners who made it happen. So these went on sale Friday during Art and About, and out of the 90 bags, 85 bags that we put out there, I think there's 15 left. So they went like hotcakes. If you guys, that's what my mom always used to say. I don't know if anybody understands going like hotcakes anymore, but for us, you guys all get it. But anyway, so we're selling them, and we will restock. We'll print more of these. We're selling them for $5 with a minimum purchase of $15, and they'll be out in most of our retailers. Right now, we only have them left at Berkley Eyewear and Local Sunglass Store, and actually, Have You Any Wool has a few. Because it makes such a nice knitting bag. Sorry, you guys, I'm a marketer at heart,
I'm not stopping you.
Oh, here you go. Yeah. So there'll be more of these, and then we'll actually put them out into most of our retailers. But we also, because we just have a blank made, are able then to screen print them for our specific events. And I put the pressure on John over at Armadillos, who was kind enough to run off a single bag for me today. So this will be our Ladies' Night Out bag. Same thing, each and every one is unique because of the handles. I should point out they're, Citizens and Better Life bag is just a little label. It's co-branded right there. Because we wanted to kind of not have it covered with all kinds of logos. So these will be coming out for our Ladies' Night event on this Thursday, 5 to 9. It'll be in all the shops that are open for Ladies' Night Out. And once again, you'll be able to buy these $5 with a purchase, $10 on its own. And all the money, all the funds go back into a dedicated account so that we can purchase more bags in the future. So this has been, as those who know me well or who used to sit on the DDA board, it's been a huge passion of mine to get this done, and I'm so excited that we can finally roll it out. And we've gotten some great press, and I think it just speaks to the thought that the DDA board is putting into its initiatives, and this idea that we really want to support our local entrepreneurs in those businesses. And I can't think of a better way than with these bags. So anyway, I wanted to share it. Get the news out there. Ladies' Night Out, Thursday night, 5 to 9. Get your bag.
Thank you, Vivian. Okay, seeing nobody else scrambling anywhere to get out, we will close citizens' comments and move on to our order of business. Ms. Bouch, would you please read the items on today's consent agenda, please?
Approve of the minutes. Matter of approving the minutes of the 37th City Council meeting on Monday, June 18, 2018. Warrant. Matter of approving warrant number 1328. And resolution number R2518. Matter of recognizing Eagle Scout Eric Moran and the Friends of the Berkeley Parks and Recreation.
Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Councilmember Stedman. Somebody else? Support. Support by Councilmember Gavin. Any corrections or additions? Seeing none. Ms. Bouch, would you please call the roll?
Dean.
Yes.
Gavin.
Yes.
Hennan.
Yes.
Stedman.
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Blanchard,
Yes.
and Turbrack.
Yes. Now move on to our regular agenda. Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 1 on our regular agenda?
Recognitions, presentations, matter of any recognitions or presentations from the consent agenda.
I have asked Councilmember Dean to read Resolution R 2518. Sure, ask him.
Eric Moran, I see you in the back. Would you mind coming up while I read this proclamation? Are you okay with that?
Josh Elder from the Friends is here as well.
Sorry. Okay, both of you, please. Thank you. A resolution of the Council of the City of Berkley, Michigan, recognizing Eagle Scout Eric Moran and the Friends of Berkley Parks and Recreation. Whereas the Friends of Berkley Parks and Recreation committed to improving the space known as Oxford Towers Park on Harvard Road, and whereas the Friends of Berkley Parks and Recreation partnered with Eric Moran to beautify and add recreation amenities to Oxford Towers Park, and whereas Eric Moran, an Eagle Scout candidate in Berkley Troop 1085, wanted to construct a sandbox and chess tables to be used by people of all ages at the park, and whereas Eric worked diligently to present a plan to the Parks and Recreation Department and the Friends of Parks and Recreation to create additional recreation offerings at Oxford Towers Park. And whereas the Friends of Berkley Parks and Recreation held a park cleanup day to paint benches, trim weeds and grass, and prepare for the sandbox and chess tables at Oxford Towers Park. And whereas Oxford Towers Park has been greatly enhanced with the added recreation elements constructed and installed by Eric Moran in cooperation with the Friends of Berkley Parks and Recreation. Now, therefore, the City of Berkley resolves, Section 1, that the Council of the City of Berkley appreciates the effort, hard work, and craftsmanship that Eric Moran displayed in constructing and installing a sandbox and 2 chess tables at Oxford Towers Park, and Section 2, that the Council of the City of Berkley appreciates the continued efforts of the Friends of Berkley Parks and Recreation to support and improve the city's parks and programs. Introduced and passed at a regular City Council meeting on Monday, July 16th, 2018.
That's awesome.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Piece of paper for you.
Thank you very much.
This one's yours, Jess. This is yours.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Super cool.
Thank you.
Good job, appreciate it.
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah, good, thanks. I just didn't want to, kind of came off the. All right, Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 2 on tonight's agenda?
Ordinance number 00718, matter of considering the first reading of an ordinance to rezone property described as lots 52-53 of the Dinler Acres subdivision from multiple family residential RM to planned unit development PUD, and lots 13 to 15 of Dinler Acres subdivision from office 0-1 to planned unit development PUD.
Is there a motion to approve 00718?
Motion to approve.
No, not right now. Has been moved by the Mayor Pro Tem. Support? Okay, supported by Councilmember Dean. We now have the motion on the floor. I'm going to handle this right now before we go any further. First off, I appreciate everybody that's here today, everybody that has been involved in this process from the beginning over the past 22 months-ish, almost 2 years. Situations like this, it always seems like some people are happy and some people are not happy, but it's our job to make those decisions, and we're going to make a decision in just a few minutes. I do want to note that we did receive a protest petition that was filed and is included in the agenda packet. That was also verified by the city clerk for property owners within 100 feet of the proposed development. Over the past almost 2 years now, the Planning Commission, developer, community at large, have been discussing this proposed unit development. In my personal opinion, that should never have happened. It should not have taken 22 months for any resolution, an up or down vote on any singular project in the city. It's just not fair to anybody involved. It's not fair to the developer. There's certainly costs. It's not fair to the residents who continue to are passionately involved in this. It's not fair to city staff. It's not fair for the owner of the property. We should have been able to come to a decision much sooner than this. I'm not going to rehash why it took so long and decide, you know, whose fault was it that it took a long time. At this point, none of that matters. Multiple parties that were responsible for the process being so drawn out. If you read my most recent mayor's message, one of the things that I mentioned was that fact that it should never take this long for any project. It's not that, you know, we don't want development or we don't want projects. That's not the case, but like I said, 22 months, it should never happen. People need to have an understanding. They need to know what's going on, and we need to be able to move on. And if it's changing courses, then we need to change courses. As you're all aware, the Planning Commission did vote last time to recommend denial to City Council, and that's where we are today. Part of the reason this project has been such a lightning rod, in my opinion, is because it impacts a church in the city, a local church, Our Lady of La Salette Church, that many residents are parishioners of, have been parishioners of for almost 100 years since the church has been around. As has been mentioned publicly and on social media, I happen to be one of those people. Not only am I a lifelong member of the parish, third generation member, actually, I was also the principal when the school was shut down in 2013, which is the property that we are currently talking about right now. So, yes, I care deeply about Our Lady of La Salette. It's, like I said, been in my family for generations, and hopefully it's going to continue to be in my family for generations. But what happened was we ended up getting into a situation where people were pitted against each other, and it devolved into La Salette parishioners who care deeply about the church and want to, you know, do what they can and what they think is best in the best interest of the church. And then we have the non-parishioner residents who felt like, oh, the only reason anybody was pushing this was because it impacted the church. And, you know, one side saying the church will die if this doesn't happen, and the other side saying separation of church and state, not my problem, in my opinion, does not help any conversation, any discussion, any development that we're talking about. And that's the part that really bothers me. It should not be an us versus them situation in our city. It never should have come to that. But that's the narrative that's been built over the past couple of years. And again, multiple folks, multiple reasons why that happened. I am not casting any blame or any aspersions on anybody. I can tell you that tonight, that will not happen. We are not going to be devolving into any he said, she said, this, that, or the other thing. This should be a win-win situation for everybody, for the church, developer, the city, the residents, and everybody involved. We have an opportunity, you know, to have a development here that the cities can be proud of. Development that's going to set the course for Coolidge for decades into the future. And a development that alleviates the additional burdens of the vacant property that the church is currently dealing with. But it's never been about that. And it was always, again, in a situation where one side is pitted against the other side. Whatever the vote is tonight, it is not a vote for or against La Salette or for or against residents or community members or the Planning Commission. None of that. The vote that we're casting tonight is very specific to this project. And is this project in the best interest of the city of Berkeley? That is all we're going to talk about today. I applaud the developer's persistence. The developer has come back many times trying to make something that fit into the city and met the vision for what the city wants, the Planning Commission wants, the master plan calls for. But this project is not that project, in my opinion. The size and scale is just quite simply too large to align with our vision for Coolidge. I'm not going to get into parking or special lane. It doesn't matter right now to me. What matters is, for this board, is the project. is this something that we want built in the city, or is it not what we want built in the city right now? We want development. We certainly want development on that parcel for every reason that I mentioned earlier. It will be beneficial for the church to not have a vacant, empty old school and parking lot. It will be nice for the residents to have potentially a nice new building, something that's going to, as I mentioned, set the tone for future development on Coolidge. Those are things that we need and we want. And we want to work with this developer or what the next developer, whoever it is, to try to create that ideal, that vision that we have. As I mentioned, council has been very closely following this. May not have come to us before, but that doesn't mean that we have not, some of us, been at planning commission meetings, watched planning commission meetings, been in contact with residents on both sides, for, against, and all of the above. We've had meetings, we've had updates from the city manager's office. I've met individually with the developers on at least one occasion, and representatives of the diocese on another occasion. We've heard from everybody. We understand exactly what the issues are, what the benefits are, and what the potential negatives are of this project. Our job tonight is to vote on the same application that was presented at the Planning Commission. We are not talking about changes, alterations, none of that. We have to vote simply on what the Planning Commission recommended denial, and we are not going to send this back to the Planning Commission either, because then we just get back into that same web of months and months going down the road and not coming to any sort of conclusion. It's going to get an up or down vote. I'm ready to do that right now, and if my colleagues are ready, we can.
Sure.
Ready?
Yeah.
Like a straw poll first.
Okay? On, what would you like the straw poll on?
The motion on the table, if
Okay, sure. We'll start with you, Councilmember Gavin.
I would not support it.
not support.
I would not support it.
Not supporting.
Not supported.
Not support it.
And I have already made that clear, I think, that I am also not supporting it. With that, is there any additional discussion?
My only comment is, do we need to allow citizen comment on this issue?
I don't have a problem with comments. I do have a problem when it gets into situations like we saw at the public hearings. And that is not something that I'm going to tolerate or deal with. So residents at this point have heard from council. The developer asked if he could speak to council. At this point, if you have something additionally that you would like to add, I will give you a couple of moments to do that, but it's not going to be a presentation. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Keith Owen. I represent Berkley Coolidge LLC. And I did have a presentation prepared and was told I couldn't do that. So I'm not going to do that, but what I am going to say is, as the mayor has indicated, 22 months to get an approval or a project through this kind of process is really almost unheard of. And I would only offer, in lieu of a presentation, I would like to talk about the project that was presented and in the involvement that I've had in the project since roughly February, trying to get the whole package on a track to move forward for approval. The design and development team met and worked diligently with the consultant that was hired by the city to review this project. We met with Mr. Carlisle, we met with Tim McLean, and we kicked back and forth alternatives about how we might modify this project. And I would just like to offer that what was presented at the June meeting lowered the number of units to 129 total, 13 different unit types, a wide variety of housing for residents of this community. We increased open space on the project. We reduced all four corners of the building to 4 stories. We responded to the parking issue, which Mr. Mayor, as you know, went off in a whole lot of different directions, but we think we more than met reasonable and comparable community parking requirements. We believe that the submittal met all of the SPA's 19-item checklist. We believe it meets the requirements for PUD approval. We think the housing type we're talking about is consistent with how we interpreted the master plan for this project. I think this community wants and probably really needs housing of this type. And quite frankly, we believe that the Carlisle-Workman report supports the fact that we met those stipulations and worked diligently to try to achieve that. I think it's unfortunate that the Planning Commission chose to vote the project down. Clearly the sentiment of council seems to be that way, but this site desperately needs a development, and it needs a development as housing, and there needs to be a path that's more direct and less filled with roadblocks than this one has been.
Okay.
I would like to share, and we will share sort of a chronology of the project with the council in letter form. I was prepared to go through that tonight, but I will not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Owen. Okay. With that, any further? Seeing no further discussion, Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll on 00718?
Gavin?
No.
Hennan?
No.
Sedman?
No.
Baker?
No.
Blanchard?
No.
Dean?
No.
And Turbrack.
No. Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 3 on tonight's agenda?
Motion number M5218, matter of approving appointments to various boards and commissions.
Is there a motion to approve M5218?
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem with support from Council Member Hennan. Mr. Baumgarten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, there are several positions that come up from time to time, and we solicit and receive applicants for the various vacancies. Before you this evening are openings in the Environmental Advisory Committee, the brand-new Technology Advisory Committee, the Planning Commission, the Tree Board, and the Zoning Board of Appeals. I'll go through each one of those items for you now. Applicants for the Environmental Advisory Committee are Catherine Nelson with the term expiring July 1st, 2019. The brand new Technology Advisory Committee has, as you know, 8 applicants for 7 positions. We did have one gentleman who has removed his name from consideration. The first is John Correa with the term expiring July 1st, 2019. Kevin McDade with a term expiring in 2019. Mike Fry is the gentleman who has removed his name from contention, so James Cannon would be moved forward in his place with a term expiring in 2019. David Robert Jacobs with a term expiring in 2020. Mark Owens, 2020. Aaron Pace in 2020. And Michael Swantek, also in 2020. Under the Planning Commission, new member Gregory Patterson has applied and his name is put forth for appointment through 2021. The Tree Board, Ms. Kim Wilt, with a term expiring July 1st, 2021. And Zoning Board of Appeals, Mr. Miles Euler is reapplying for a term expiring in July of 2021 as well.
Thank you, Mr. Baumgarten. Discussion from council on the applicants. Councilmember Blanchard.
I have a question, thank you. On the Technology Advisory Committee, what's the relationship going to be with our IT person? How is Stan going to interface? Is he going to be on this committee, or how is he going to work with this?
In addition to the 7 members at large, there's a council liaison, and then myself and Stan will serve as staff support to that body. So we would both be working in support of that group.
Okay, my concern is most of these people, I'm sure, are working for-profit IT operations, and a municipal nonprofit operation is a little bit different, and want to make sure that there's somebody there to steer them so that we're not going off in a direction that's not really feasible for a municipal government. So,
Yeah, it's a point well made, sir.
thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Your Honor. And to build on that point, I'm very pleased with the caliber of talent that has stepped forward to help with the inaugural membership here of this new committee. And in speaking with our IT director, I think the first couple of sessions will be equal parts orientation and information, as well as some advisory to help folks understand what we are at and what we can do, and the progress we've made, and the journey ahead for how we can leverage technology to both help municipal operations and also provide even better service to our residents and businesses. So very pleased with the start that we're positioning ourselves for here with this committee.
Thank you. Additional comments? Are any of the residents that were mentioned here? You guys are here? Anybody? Please stand up.
A
Stand
couple,
up.
yay.
Yeah, stand up. Thank you guys for coming. We appreciate it. Thank you. I guess we probably should have voted before I did that. Sorry.
On that,
Okay. All right. Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll on M5218?
Hennan,
Yes.
Stedman,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Blanchard.
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
and Turbrack.
Yes.
All right.
All right. Thank you. You are. You can relax now. Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 4 on tonight's agenda?
Presentation, matter receiving a presentation by Hubble Roth and Clark Incorporated, HRC, on the combined sewer capacity study.
Okay. I'm going to send this over to Mr. Baumgarten in a minute, but before I do that, I do want to draw attention to just a couple of things. So we are going to be looking at a presentation of the sewer capacity study. And again, this is not a work session item yet. That will be coming down the road. Today we're just getting a look at the findings, some very high-level results, and then we will lay out our path forward after that. Mr. Baumgarten?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The city staff, members of my office, as well as the Department of Public Services and various other departments, have been working hand in hand with the city's engineers to try to go over the capacity analysis from our sanitary or from our combined sewer standpoint. This, as you said, this is now that the study has been concluded, and it's actually available now on the website as of just a few minutes ago, as well as this presentation for anybody who wants to follow along. The results are very new, so we're still going over a lot of those, just now being shared with City Council as well. So there will certainly be plenty of opportunities for discussion as the community has a chance to sort of digest this, take a look at it, same with the City Council. But we did want to make sure that we take a moment to pause and go over some of the findings that came up in this study, as well as the methodology and some of the significant portions of this very report. There will be plenty of opportunity for public information, for public follow-up, work sessions, and the such, but did want to make sure that we check in this evening on basically the information that we've put forward here, so that anyone has a chance to view this and take a look at what some of the findings were. It's always important to remember with these things, as we've been repeating, that there is no sort of capital F fix for sewer systems, whether it's storms like we had yesterday and we're likely to get tonight. These are the kind of storms that were our system kind of handles, and it gives some of us, I'm sure, stomach churning a sensation, but our system does handle these. It's other larger storms that are always going to be a thing that we worry about, always going to be a reality of the world that we live in. And so we've tried to work on ways, and this report does a good job of suggesting possible directions that we could take our system and how to make ourselves more resilient. So with that being said, we will invite our presenters this evening.
You want to get one of the lights? Sure.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Thanks for having us today. As Mr. Baumgartner said, we've been working on this study for approximately the last 8-9 months, working closely with city staff, DPW staff. Just as a way of introductions, we are from Hubble Roth and Clark. My name is Edward Smish, as most of you probably know me by now. I was a project manager overseeing the project and the study. Roland Alex is our vice president and also overseeing the project. Jim Surhai, our associate and the head of our technical team that was crunching the numbers over the last several months. And we did as well have a lot of help from our GIS staff, some field staff, and some other design help as well within our office. As we have a little background, obviously why are we here today and what brought us to this point to look at this study? Obviously severe rain events causing basement flooding over the years has been an issue here, as well as in many communities around the state and around the country for that matter. Just as in the city of Berkeley, most of the communities actually in southeast Michigan still had combined sewers even up through the 1990s. And as you know, there are many systems today that still are combined, just as Berkeley's is. Also, just a little bit about our background as far as doing these type of capacity studies. Our company's been around over 100 years, but you know, we've well over 40 years now, we've done many studies like this as far as looking at capacity of combined sewer systems, sanitary systems. So we have a lot of knowledge in this type of work. They are very tedious, complex studies that do require a lot of data input and a lot of months of work. But probably more so what we want to say is also that these studies, what they do ultimately is they offer a framework which is providing information to support the municipality's strategic planning process for future capital improvement programs, projects, CIPs. That said, the content of these reports are not project plans per se. They are not plans that strategically lay out exactly what you need to do where, how much it's going to cost. What they do is they provide options, they provide the foundation from there to look at your system on a closer level, basically. A little more background as far as the city system. By the 1970s, the city had already begun installing catch basin restricted covers on certain areas of the city. What that does is it reduces the risk of basement flooding after intense rain events. And what it does is it keeps the rain in the streets instead of having the water go into the basements as quickly. By the late 1970s, as you all know, there was a number of large-scale projects that were done around the city. Some of them involved the 12 towns combined relief sewers done by the county, and also several city-funded combined relief sewers were also completed during that decade. The city also continued to do their catch basin restriction programs. To this very day, actually, they do, which we will mention again in a few minutes. Obviously, since the 2010s, there have been now some rain events, early 2010s, where we have had some microbursts, which have caused sporadic basement flooding. And from what we had heard from a lot of residents over the months is, you know, from the 70s to about this time, there really wasn't much of anything as far as widespread basement flooding, you know, other than maybe local issues with private leads. But now we are at a point where climate has been changing, so we do need to start looking into that. A little more background, just real briefly, on the sewer system, kind of mentioned it, but the city sewers are tributary to the Southeast Oakland County Sewage Disposal District, which does include a lot of the drains that I mentioned from Wayne County. These drains do deliver flow ultimately to the DeQuinder Interceptor, which is under the GLWA jurisdiction, and eventually, as most systems, will drain down to the Detroit wastewater plant for treatment. It is important to note here that, you know, all the sewers and drains within the city and the counties do drain via gravity, so they're not pumped, which is a key point. There is wet weather combined flows at the end of the interceptor, which is by the George W. Kuhn Drain Retention Treatment Facility, which is also owned by WRC. Tasks and goals of this study. So as you know, HRC was tasked to complete basically a citywide combined sewer capacity study with respect to the 10-year design storm, and we'll get into what the design storm is in a couple minutes. And also we were asked to evaluate the catch basin restriction programs that have been ongoing within the city for decades, and to look at the future use of those programs as well. From these tasks, we had a number of goals that we wanted to provide the city with. They are listed here. I'll read them real quick, but it was basically we wanted to be able to provide information about the sewer system that could be used to strategically develop capital improvement programs, as we said earlier. The information can also be used to evaluate any capital improvement options as it relates to your sewer system and sewer system capacity. It also provides a contact for future decision-making related to overall infrastructure improvements to your roads, water mains, and sewers. As we all know, there's a lot of projects that could be done, which could be combined in areas that maybe you have roads, sewers, and water mains that are all priorities. There are economies of scale to combining programs such as that. Ultimately, what we want to recommend is that this project, anything that the city eventually does in the future, is it has to be a multi-phased, multi-level approach in order to accomplish this goal of mitigating the potential for flood. That brings us to a term of climate resiliency, which again we will define in a minute. Looking just briefly at what the report content was, 5 major areas here. We first of all, looked at the overall combined sewer system of the city, including maintenance practices and capacity. We looked at climate resiliency or other flood exposures within the city itself, which led to challenges within the local sewer system and as well as the regional sewer system. We also looked at a number of city mitigation efforts to date the city has taken on. And we also then looked at potential future mitigation efforts which can be done by multiple entities, which we will get into here. In looking at the city's combined sewer system, as we said, it is a combined sewer system. So what that means is, as the picture shows, it takes all your domestic sewage from inside your house or business, all your sink, showers, toilets, washing machine, all that goes into a large pipe, which also will accept all of your stormwater from whether your catch basins in the street, yard basins, your floor drains from around your home, sump pumps. It will take all the water, into one combined pipe, which is why it's called a combined system. The city has approximately 60 miles of sewer under their jurisdiction. There are 77 sewer connections to the county's drain system, so that's an awful lot of sublets, if you will, where it's not just one area where the city, dumps into the county system. There are 77 of them. And again, as we said earlier, all these systems do drain by gravity to a regional facility ultimately. As many of you know, this is rather, it's an older community, older infrastructure, as many of the communities in Southeast Michigan, so meaning that many of your sewers are at least 80 years old. Could be 100 years old, some of them. We don't even have, the full history of some of them, but to date, in working with DPW over the years, there has been approximately 30% of these sewers have been structurally lined, though, and we will describe that in a minute as well. Depending on the pipe material, you do have clay pipe, you do have concrete pipe, you have some plastic. Sewer lines can last anywhere from 60 to 120 years, depending. A couple components that we will look at too is the maintenance capacity of the system in this report, and again, the climate resiliency. So climate resiliency, basically what is it? We keep referring to it. What it refers to is the ability of a municipality or a system to function, adapt, and absorb the stresses imposed upon it by climate change in order to improve the sustainability of the system. That is, in our case, to mitigate the potential for future risk of basement flooding. That said, there are no quick, easy, or cheap methods to address climate resiliency. We all wish there was a smoking gun, something that just pops out at you, but unfortunately that's not the case in these citywide studies, and that's just every study we've been involved in the past. That's how these studies go. It's not just a Berkeley issue. This is a regional issue. Many other communities in the area, other communities that we've done these studies for, Beverly Hills, Birmingham, Southfield, they've all had a lot of issues over the years that have taken many years to come up with programs to alleviate problems or mitigate through different measures. So it's an ongoing plan, if you will, for these communities. It's not just something that's fixed overnight. And again, this is what many communities have experienced over the years and continue to experience. To illustrate that point, we just threw in some of these pictures here, which obviously a lot of people are familiar with, but The top picture, of course, is a flooded street on Berkley during one of the large rain events. On the bottom there is a road that was heavily impacted from flooding in Houghton, Michigan. We also have a couple other examples here, which I'm sure many of you remember driving the freeways around some of those very large storm events, and I-75 in particular. These are just a couple other pictures related to capacity and climate resiliency. And again, these are the conditions that we showed in these pictures that are increasingly being felt by many communities in the state and the region, and even nationwide for that matter. So because of that, there has been a rising awareness of climate change impacts and trying to come up with plans to mitigate flooding issues. So then we looked at some challenges within the local and regional sewer systems. As it pertains to challenges within the local and regional system, it must be understood that the city's sewer system efficiency is firmly limited to its ultimate outlet, which we have said before, all your sewage drains into the 12 towns and into relief sewers that has its own capacity. So that is your ultimate capacity, and you are restricted to that outlet. In addition, the city of Berkeley does not have any natural storm water outlets, if you will, within the city limits, such as the River Rouge or another pond or something that maybe you could separate and put the stormwater into, such as some of your neighboring communities that do have that capability. Some of the other challenges, as far as even just looking at the backups in sewers and what can cause the backups, obviously systems can be overwhelmed by the stormwater volume and intensity from these large rain events in particular. And as we said before, all your drainage can come from downspouts and footing drains and some pumps as well. Especially if they're directly connected, you're going to get that water in the system quicker. Of course, there could be blockages in sewers. The city has done an incredible job at looking at their sewers over the years, and again, I'll go into that briefly as far as what the city's been doing over the years. And there could as well be blocked sewer leads on private homes, which obviously from time to time that happens. You know, again, it's old infrastructure. You get a lot of trees. It could you can get root blockage in your lead. Can collapse the lead. You know, many things can happen with that. So we mentioned before the design storm event. So basically, it's a term that's thrown around and sometimes misunderstood. But what it refers to, as we say here, is the intensity of a rainfall for a specified duration based on a statistical analysis of actual historic rain events for a region. So it's based on decades of data, rainfall data, and then of course it's broken up by region to tell you how much, you know, what a 10-year, in this example, what a 10-year 1-hour storm event would look like, how many inches that would be. So as I said, we're looking at both reoccurrence interval and a duration. And what the design standard is, what we also use for this report, is a 10-year 1-hour storm event. And that's the industry standard. That's how sewers are designed today. Modern practice, as I said, throughout South Michigan is designed to combine sewers using a 10-hour 1-year storm as the basis of design. So the misnomer is that a 10-year storm, what it really means is that you're saying there's a 10% chance of that storm occurring in any year. It's not saying that that's going to happen once every 10 years. So that being said, a 10-year storm can occur multiple times in any given year. It's not going to just happen one time a year, and then you're good for that year. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. Over the last 25 years, as I said, there is the data that's been collected for decades. It does appear over the last 25 years that there is a slight upward trend in the 10-year 1-hour storm volume from 1.66 to 1.7 inches, which is an approximate 2% increase, which leads you to believe that there are more high-intense rainfalls these days, which, you know, has been a hot topic in many newspapers and publications across the country, talking about climate resiliency again. So getting in briefly to city mitigation efforts to date. As I said earlier, since the 1970s, the city of Berkeley has been working to implement enhancements to mitigate the impact of these extreme rain events within the city. And some of the examples, we'll start here with the Catch Basin Restriction Program, which again was started decades ago, and it is ongoing today. And just this past spring, the city did purchase and install 200 additional restricted covers around the city. And this was based on our initial findings in the report, and we worked together with the city to kind of come up with some areas and where we felt that these restricted covers would help. Obviously, the benefit of these covers is that it slows the flow of stormwater into the system so it doesn't overburden the sewer system. This is what a typical 4-hole restricted cover that the city uses looks like on the left, and then your pretty much standard 64-hole non-restricted cover is on the right. As you can tell, obviously a lot more water can get in through the grate on the right side. Other citywide mitigation efforts to date would include, as I mentioned earlier briefly, that the city has over 25 years now have undergone televising, cleaning, and structural lining programs. So what they do is every year they meet with the contractor early in the year, and they have a number of areas that they know need to be cleaned and televised and potentially lined. So those have been going on for at least 25 years now. What it does, obviously, like as we say, it reduces the likelihood of blockages and pipe failures and ensures optimum performance. And as I said, the city has been doing a great job over these years. Takes roughly 3 years for the city DPW department to get through all the sewers, which is pretty good because a lot of communities it takes 2 or 3 times as long as that to get through their sewers. What lining does, it's basically a plastic pipe, what it becomes once it cures, and it's seamless, of course. But what they say, what the manufacturers say, that it adds another 100 years to the lifespan of the pipe, being that it's plastic and not, something more brittle like clay. Even concrete can break down, deteriorate. So it has been something that many communities have been doing now for decades, and the city of Berkeley seems to be ahead of that curve as well, as I said. So this is just a snapshot of what a pre and post lining sewer looks like. As you can see on the left, this is a typical sewer before you line it. There's a lot of deposits on the pipe itself. A little hard to tell here, but there are some cracks. And once all that is cleaned out, this is what the new pipe looks like on the right side there. A nice new clean plastic white pipe, basically. And as long as the pipe is in, the existing pipe is in good condition and structurally sound, you can line the pipe. If it comes to a point where you have a collapsed pipe, but then at that point you have to cut out that section and put in a new piece. And then you can line the rest of the section after that. Additional efforts that the city have done, have undergone through the years. This dating back to before the 1990s, there was a downspout disconnection program. Which is very important in a combined district. As many of you know and remember, that the city was actually one of the first round recipients of the SAW grant back in 2013. And what we did, we created an entire GIS system of your entire sewer system, and everything has been ID'd. All your manholes have been inspected. At the time, under the grant, half of your sewer lines were inspected, but as I said, the city of Berkeley will do this regardless of the SAW grant or not, because they're trying to keep ahead of sewer issues. So it was a very good program, and it was good that the city was one of the first round candidates for this project. What it's done, obviously, is once you look at the sewer videos, you can then see if you have any potential issues that you may want to go ahead and line those sewers before you do have maybe a potential collapse. Finally, another effort the city has undertaken over the years is to update their commercial development stormwater requirements, and that is to require restrictor covers in parking lots, looking at stormwater detention, etc. So what we have here, in identifying future mitigation efforts that could be undertaken, it's important to note that there are various levels of participation by all parties that would benefit and impact the potential for flooding. As we see here, we're calling this the impact pyramid, if you will. It's a multi-level participation. On a smaller level, there's always the resident and business participation that could do small things to help the system. On a larger level, the city participation, which would have a considerable impact. And then finally, at the base of the pyramid, is the regional participation, which ultimately, of course, would have the greatest potential for having an impact on flood mitigation. Now we'll just take a few minutes here to just talk about some future mitigation efforts, and we'll start using this pyramid from the residential and commercial property side of things. As we mentioned before, a lot of these leads are rather old and can have issues, particularly with tree roots. We would always recommend that there's regular maintenance of these private sanitary leads by the homeowner or business owner, hiring a plumber to televise and clean and inspect these lines and replace if necessary. Another thing that we want to have in place is that all downspouts are disconnected from the main line sewer and either discharged on grade or directed to rain barrels, which I know was another topic that has come up in the past. And that's another measure of mitigation, small measure, but everything helps, is to install rain barrels or rain gardens. I know many people around the region are getting more interested in keeping water for their gardens and whatnot. By planting trees and shrubbery and ground cover, that also helps. And of course, installing backflow prevention on your private lead, which is I know some people have done that over the years, and I believe the city's even held a workshop on that, and that's another good measure on an individual level. And looking at some of the smaller scale, moderate scale efforts for city participation, as the city has been doing for years, just expand the catch basin restriction program basically and continue to monitor where maybe we can make some additional covers, swap them out and put some new covers in different spots. Also to investigate any city-owned facilities that are parking lots, alleys in the near future to provide additional restrictive covers as well on those surfaces. Also, as we mentioned before about backflow prevention, exploring cost-sharing options, arrangements for funding backflow prevention measures at individual homes and businesses. Additional small-scale and moderate efforts from the city would also include reviewing and exploring revisions to both commercial and residential properties as far as the stormwater ordinance and current standards for development. And again, that kind of goes back to requiring some catch basin restriction or on-site detention, maybe a lot coverage restrictions. Also, something else would be to reevaluate the city's equivalent residential unit calculations, and as well to prepare a feasibility study for the implementation of bioswales and/or bioretention within city road rights-of-way, which would typically be in boulevard sections. Also on the city level, we get to the large-scale efforts. Looking at these large-scale efforts, they would include to investigate the feasibility and practicality of projects such as segment-by-segment replacement of combined sewers, combined sewer relief, storm sewer relief, sanitary sewer separation, which would be new parallel sewers, storage facilities, whether combined or stormwater, detention or retention, and then just continuing with implementing the comprehensive catch basin restrictions. I know it's more of a small, moderate effort, but we kept it here as well in the large-scale effort. And in any of these, what you want to do is the future sewer improvement projects should be looked at in conjunction with other capital improvement projects in a given area. As I mentioned earlier, looking at your water, sewer, and roads at the same time to see where maybe you could combine, have some economies of scale and combine a project. So as these last few slides have shown, in order to accomplish the goal of mitigating the potential for flooding due to extreme rain events, the efforts should be taken following a strategic, multi-phased, and multi-level approach. So what this report provides is the foundation for the discussion, development, and implementation of future CIP projects. In utilizing the data, the ongoing catch basin restriction program could be expanded in order to identify new areas that could be investigated. The city's sewer relining efforts, which have been going on for as I said, 25-plus years, should be continuing. And then long-range CIP programs for sewers that can be developed along with road projects. This report does also ask that a number of things be kept in mind. And that really is to include the fact that, as we said earlier, there really are no quick, easy, or cheap methods to eliminate basement flooding in Berkeley or in any other community for that matter. As we said, with climate resiliency, that there are changing weather patterns, as we all have seen with these microbursts, corresponding high-intensity rain events that can lead to flooding events, and those aren't going anywhere, as we've seen. Regardless of the capacity of any municipality or regional combined sewer system, there will always be the possibility that a larger storm will occur to overwhelm the system. So no matter what you design it for, there's always that risk that there's going to be a larger storm. It is what it is on that. But in general, the city must weigh the costs and benefits of large-scale capital improvements to the sewer system before they are implemented. So, in summary, this is our, as we said, the first step in the process. We are here if you have any additional questions right now. Again, this was an overview. We know there's going to be a lot of questions once you've had time to look at the report, the rather large report. But we are here this evening right now if there are any questions at this point from our design team. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Eddie and Roland and Jim, for being here today. As was mentioned a number of times, this was a kind of a much more high-level look. I assume the actual report that we'll see when we get into that has all the numbers and the math and all of the good stuff behind it that we really need to look at and digest and take a lot more care and thought and trying to map out what the next phases for us are going to be. We've got certainly some recommendations there, some things that we can do from the city standpoint, some things residents can choose to do. But ultimately, to really have a significant, I guess, impact, I think we need to have more regional collaboration. One of the things that was mentioned potentially is separating and not have a combined system. But at the end of the day, that's still got to drain into the system that we have right now, and I don't know that it would have the impact that we would like it to have actually in the future. So. We're certainly going to be discussing this. Are there any, kind of quick questions here for HRC while they're here based on what we talked about today? Councilmember Hennon?
Yeah. I had a chance to look at the draft report, and even at the draft level, I was really impressed with the level of detail and that it gave us a lot of practical and the things that we could do and covered a lot of the bases. One thing, you made some projections on places that would be good places to target to that would have the most impact for improvements. Did we see any correlation between the places that we projected would be a good place to go and that we've had flooding in 2014 and 2017?
Sure, we can try to answer that. The study, as Eddie had mentioned, was looking at the capacity, and it's a great question. Obviously, one of the reasons we're here, like Eddie alluded to, was the fact that you've had flooding in your community over the last 5 or 6 years. The 2014 event was a regional event, and approximately 80% of your city flooded. So that's not a very good storm to compare it to, because it was it affected almost everybody in the community. And then unfortunately, or fortunately for those who didn't live in the path of the 2017 storm, as Eddie alluded to, we call them microbursts. So it's a smaller, narrower type of storm that has a very high intensity. And so that kind of was focused in the middle part of the city. It's difficult to look at that event knowing that it only hit a certain part of the city and then try to compare that to areas that have a higher priority, that the report alludes to having a higher priority of needing fixes or improvements. So unfortunately, there's not a great correlation at this point, because you could have another storm that comes in next week and it hits a little different part of the city, and it's just difficult to compare those the capacity with a certain event.
My only other comment is just for us. I'd love for us to get the work session going on this as soon as we can, and also to hear what sort of regional cooperative efforts we're looking at and trying to get going.
Thank you.
I just have one more question on what you just, so what about the areas that were hit both times, like the regional event and then the microburst? Would there be any correlation there with those places that were hit both times and the next steps or the correlation between what you're doing next?
Again, it's a great question, and our report identifies areas that have capacity issues, and unfortunately, we just we didn't feel it was it's important, but we didn't feel evaluating those two storms with relation to the capacity of the sewer, which is a standalone capacity, was going to do much good. So yes, there were people that got hit both times, and I know when we sit around a table back at our office, we feel horrible that we are trying to kind of compress this into numbers and data, but it obviously affects people, and we understand the human aspect of that. But it's difficult to draw a correlation between the 14 and the 17 because there were two different events, and then it's difficult to draw the correlation between those two events and the existing capacity, which is the size of the sewer. So,
Okay.
wish I had a better answer, but there's just not a lot of correlation that we found at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Your Honor. Thanks to you all for the diligence and focus in the report. Look forward to digging into the final version in far more detail, and I echo the comments of anticipation for the work session that we have both at our municipal level and then at the regional level. Could you talk a little bit more about the gravity aspect of this? Not the gravity of the situation, but because that's pretty clear, but the gravity flow that we have, because there have been questions about, did somebody not flip a switch, or did a valve get stuck, or did the knob not get turned?
Right.
Just to kind of help make it very clear how water goes from here to there.
Yeah, I want to mention a little bit of a caveat that, again, the study was on the city system.
Correct.
So when I talk about the regional WRC system, it's from a high level. We didn't study their system, but our understanding of their system and our understanding of, obviously, the city system, which you know very well, is that all flows flow from your homes, from your streets, into a sewer pipe. That combined sewer feeds by gravity into the county system via various county drains, underground county drains or above ground county drains. It drains via gravity to their main treatment facility down in
George Coon Drain.
Yeah, George Coon Drain, and then ultimately discharges from that facility further down to the Detroit River, as Eddie mentioned.
Right, so there's no mechanical pumps or valves or flaps or anything like that?
Correct.
Yeah. Cool. And we look forward to, again, seeing more details and then coming up with our short-term, long-term plan, capital improvements, resident awareness, those kind of cool things. It's going to be good. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
More time on that.
I think you got it.
Only tapped it once. That's okay.
Ms. Bouch, would you please read item number 5 on tonight's agenda?
Work session,
Oh, what's it? Sure.
They just left.
Come to the mic,
Use the
please.
microphone, please.
On Standard, Berkeley. It was mentioned that something will be on the website as several minutes ago.
Yes. Both
This
this
presentation?
presentation as well as the full report's been uploaded to the website.
The full report is on?
Mhm.
Good. That's what I need to know.
Okay, certainly. Thank you. All right. Now, Ms. Boucher, can we please read item number 5?
work session, matter of discussing an ordinance amendment to Chapter 130 Vegetation, Article 2, Trees, Bushes, and Shrubs, Section 130-31 to Section 130-44, and Section 130-76 to 130-79. Article 3, noxious weeds, Section 118-26 to 118-29 of the City of Berkeley Code of Ordinances.
Are we ready to go into work session? Do I need a motion for that, Mr. Attorney? Are we good?
You can just declare that we are
Declared.
in the work session.
Hi, I'm Kathy Carlis. I live on Royal Avenue, a resident of Berkeley and a member of the Tree Board. Tonight I am representing the Tree Board as we bring back to you this proposed ordinance for another work session. We were here before you April 16th. We received a number of comments and feedback, and we're here to hopefully answer those concerns, and maybe even to pick up another few concerns so that we can wrap this up and make this ordinance go forward. There was a lot of work done to look at other communities. Some of the communities that were looked at were Birmingham and Huntington Woods and Novi. And from previous work done from the tree board before I joined them, many hours were spent to try to develop some best practices, because our trees really are a key component of the city of Berkeley. And there's a lot of concerns about the fact that our urban forest is starting to become decimated. One of the issues, of course, is just some of the tree diseases and things like emerald ash borer affecting some of the mature trees in the city. And then there is concerns with construction, where many lots are being clear-cutted and no trees are being replaced. And so with those concerns in mind, this ordinance was put together with a number of proposed changes. At the last work session, some comments came back to the tree board that actually were not the new changes, but were from the existing ordinance. And so that caused the tree board to go back again through the whole sections and evaluate them to make sure that what we were saying really was what we want to say as a city of Berkeley. So there's been a lot of changes. Most of it is pretty minor. The intent of what was brought to you here in April is still in the current proposal. What we've done primarily is address, if you will, I will say to Berkeley, to Berkeleyize, I'm sure that's not a word, but to make the wording reflective of our city and our community. So when we cobbled together some of these ordinances, some of the language wasn't consistent. So now, for example, if we had said Parkway, we're saying Greenbelt, those kinds of things. I just want to address a few things that we talked about. I think, for example, Councilman Blanchard, you talked about Parkway, and we replaced that with Greenbelt. You talked about where we talked about department, that was rather vague. So it now says Department of Public Works. Councilman Hennon, you had specifically addressed a section 13043, which had to do with diseases in trees, and where the previous ordinance was being very specific about which trees and which diseases. You made recommendations to us to make a schedule that can be reviewed on an annual basis, and therefore make the ordinance less wordy and more relevant as a living document. I also think that Councilman Blanchard, you had a question about a document that we had referred to in my copy. It's on page 7. It's called the International Society of Arboriculture Shade Tree Evaluation Guide, or the Michigan Shade Tree Evaluation Guide. You had tried to do a little internet research and couldn't find this. It's actually not available directly on the web, but it is available for purchase from the Michigan Forestry and Park Association.com programs website. So I guess I'm just open now to your comments and questions. I think the city attorney had given us quite a lengthy list, and I reviewed those again today, and I would say we probably addressed about 90% of them, and I think there's probably about another 10% that we need to fine-tune a little bit to make this a final ordinance proposal to bring forward to you. So I open it to you for your comments and questions.
So again, the point of this work session today is to get the ordinance in proper condition so that we can come back for a first reading at the next meeting. As Kathy mentioned, some of the language has already been cleaned up. Certainly the notes from city attorney have been added and will continue to be updated. Additional questions or comments?
We haven't seen the ordinance,
I've not seen anything yet.
so it's pretty hard to comment. We sent in our comments and haven't seen anything back, so.
Not the official. I've seen some, but the rest of council has not.
My apologies. I thought that was shared earlier today, and we got the draft back from the city council, or from the tree board. As mentioned, though, the text language did address many of the items that were discussed last time during the work session. The tree board has put quite a bit of work on fine tuning this. They worked with our Department of Public Works as well as like, as mentioned, the city attorney's office to get together an enforceable and workable version of this draft. I was under the impression everyone had it.
I don't think everybody apparently saw it.
Okay. Like I said, we can share it later at a different time. But again, like I say, I would, as far as an administrative oversight goes, I think the tree board has made the appropriate changes. They are certainly in line with the comments out of the city council at the previous session. They've been working closely with the city's tree board liaison as well, Councilmember Hennon, who has weighed in and has asked very appropriate questions throughout. And again, like I said, they have done a good job of addressing the city attorney's comments as well.
Yeah.
One of the questions that I have is, it mentions in the past staff arborist. And this is, what?
It's one of mine too.
Oh, it was lifted from other cities, so I'm assuming that other cities have access or have created a staff position. If this is a common thing among all the cities in the area, maybe we need, if we're going to do that, use a consortium deal. Birmingham has a staff arborist, maybe we can, you know, share that for a fee rather than us hiring a staff arborist or contracting individually. So that's one of the things that I was brought up because I didn't know.
Yes, many of the communities take the same approach the city of Berkeley takes, was to retain a certified arborist. And so you'll see reflected in the language that certified arborist is actually the terminology that's been applied to the ordinance now. So that right now we currently have an agreement with Hart Urban Forestry.
Mm-hmm.
That is the city's certified arborist in this situation. Like I said, many of us utilize the same model for delivering that service, which is to go to a third party.
Are we gonna planning and putting an addendum to his contract that this is an additional duty that we'd pay for separately?
It's the duties outlined here and the items that they are charged with, either directly or through the city manager's designee, are already being fulfilled by them, and they're under the auspices of their current contract.
And Councilman Blanchard, there were a number of places, I think, where we replaced the staff arborist in the previous language with city attorney, or city manager.
That's not gonna help.
No. City manager or designee, understanding that this service that they provide for us can, through the city's office,
Right. I haven't seen that
be
yet, so-
given
Yeah,
certain
the updates
authority.
that were made.
And if I, Lisa Fritsch, I'm also a Berkeley resident, and the city, our staff arborists or our certified arborists also worked on these ordinances with us. And so there's nothing in here that he hasn't seen or doesn't know about. Right. These are all things he knows.
My point is, we've got to quantify the cost and make sure that we've budgeted for that, and we kind of have an idea of what that's going to be.
We have Derek Schuler and his department has successfully put forth budgets that roll upwards the tree protections that we have included. A lot of that's paid for through the major and local street funds now, so it's not necessarily a general fund effort, but we have seen those budgets increase, thankfully, through Derek's hard work working with this body as well as the Hart Urban Forestry.
I do have a question also. We received the attorney's questions or considerations or whatever, and I'm curious, do we discuss these all now, or do I just send you an email that tells you why we did certain things, or are we? Do I just discuss them right now
Sure.
with you all, or?
Yeah, this is the time.
Okay. Have you all seen his comments? Do you have those? A copy of those?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
we have them.
I don't know if you just want to go through it like each thing, but obviously the first bullet point is fine, which is just a language thing. The second bullet point is referring to 130-33. The city attorney has a concern with D, which is authorizing the city manager designee
about trimming, preserving, removal of plants and trees on private property, and whether we want to get involved with that. My question is, I don't know what's different about that than telling somebody they have to trim their shrubs or cut their grass, and if they don't do it, we do it for them, and then they get charged. I don't see a difference in that, so I'm curious what the difference is.
I mean, it's ultimately council's call, but it's quite a big difference. Telling someone to mow their lawn is one thing, but going onto people's property and basically overseeing and managing and telling them to do with their mature trees is quite a bit different, particularly when one considers the price of cutting a lawn, which is about $20, versus having to cut down a tree, which could be $1,000, $1,500. It involves passing judgment as to the health of trees, both in terms of age, disease, insect infestation, storm damage, a lot of things. I'm just raising the question whether we're a pretty small operation here. I mean, do we have the will and the wherewithal to basically embarking on a level of regulation that this city has historically not done? Not saying you can't do it, but I just am trying to bring that question to mind. Do you want to go that next step? Can you go that next step as far as funding and everything else? And is there a good reason for you to go that next step? These are all policy questions. Legally, can you do it? Yes, with certain restraints. I mean, we're not going to have the tree police. We're not going to be snooping around people's yards and giving physical examinations to their trees. But these are things that do happen, and I know from experience too that when you do, if you do embark down that path, be prepared, because it will be commonplace that the city will be called to deal with problems with trees, with branches, with dead branches, with storm damage, with concerns that someone's tree is going to fall onto their property or onto their house. These are all legitimate concerns, but things that have historically been relegated to the private sector. And there's no common things. Some communities do get into that. Others, for all the reasons I just mentioned, say, no, we're just not set up to tackle that. So I want council to be aware of it, which is why I'm bringing it to you, because when you just sometimes read the ordinances, it all looks real good, it's written real well, but want to make sure that we all understand the implications.
Okay. Comments, Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just as a process check here, to your point, looking at the memo, there's it's exhaustive in its thoroughness, and we'd expect nothing less from someone with as eagle eye as you. It is 4 pages long with 14 bullet points, and we've just covered the second of them. I don't know if we want to go through each and every one of those to this level of detail, or maybe just highlight if there's a major area of disagreement or things that we need to iron out, other than, to kind of, not to speed it along, but then I guess just more broadly, I love the fact that we are trying to move forward with this. I applaud the committee and their work in driving this forward. And if I'm not going to get too punny here, but if I hope we can
save that for the chicken.
I just got to get it out of my system. No, I hope we can take a step back and see the forest for the trees here, and recognize the overall intent, overall intent of this program, and work through the details, of course. But this feels like the right thing to do, and I'm looking forward to help support it, bring it back for first reading. So I'm just declaring where my head's at on this, and if there are some specific points that you'd like to call out from the 14 some odd bullets here, just to kind of illustrate the nature of the review work that's been ongoing, and then we can look forward to a first reading.
Fair enough. So at this point, we...
Hold on, wait, one second.
I do just want to piggyback on the city attorney's comment on the enforceability. The city's code enforcement and building department now, they do write code citations and sometimes, if need be, go to court over disease or dying trees. So those that are private but they're outwardly obvious that it is in poor condition or it does cause a health, safety, and welfare concern, we do utilize the staff arborist to, with permission, mostly with permission of the property owner, to enter the property, diagnose it, and then, if need be, write a violation if a homeowner is not willing to do the work necessary on it. So it is not a large leap from our current practice to actually enforce, the need to take down some of these health, safety, and welfare concern trees. So,
Thank you. Councilmember Hennan?
Yeah, this specific bullet point was the one I was going to highlight as potentially the most controversial one that we should probably have a discussion about. I think there's several different classes of trees that we need to consider. Would we demand a private homeowner remove a nuisance tree? For example, a mulberry. A lot of people find them nuisance with those blue blobs getting pooped all over their car. But some people enjoy the mulberries. I'd say we do not go after nuisance trees because that's difficult to define. What about invasive species? Well, maybe. Is it something that is going to be damaging if it's allowed to continue, or is it just inconvenient? So, where do we want to side on that? And then same thing with disease trees. If that tree is communicable and could serve a threat to the entire city's urban forest, then that is probably something we'll want to address. If it only is a risk to that individual tree, then that's probably something we want to be hands-off. But I think we need to decide sort of where these lines are, if this is a direction we want to go down, and how we deal with that.
So before we move on, then, what is the appetite for council on this? How invasive or how far do we want to go? Because I would tend to agree with the city attorney that it could be very difficult, and where do we draw the line at what we are trying to do or not do to protect our urban forest, certainly, but to not be overly invasive or punitive on things that may not necessarily be something in the residents' purview to fix at this time. Jack?
I would say that we should not go any deeper into this than we already are as what the city's policy is now. I don't think we need to get more extensive and, taking blood pressure checks on these trees and things. Let's, if we obviously see a diseased tree that needs to come down, then maybe we should proceed with that. But I don't want to get into the people's backyards in great detail for no reason, because it's kind of an invasion of their privacy, and I don't think it's necessary.
Okay. Additional thoughts?
I think there needs to be a real, I don't know if this is the right use of the word, but probable cause. There needs to be, we're not just randomly doing surprise inspections on trees where, there is you can see from the road it is dying, and, that it is, has some serious issues, those sorts of things.
Should involve a life safety thing, something
Safety
might fall
issue.
off. Or
Yeah,
something.
safety
That's the way
issue.
I would
Yeah.
characterize it.
I think that's probably the only way we can do it, to allow us the latitude without getting, John, what do you think?
All right, again, it's a council policy call. Certainly what you're talking about doing makes sense. It is possible to go farther, but how much farther? And again, it comes down to resources and funding, and ultimately, you push one way, you get pushed back the other way. Like you said, violating my privacy, and I like my tree. It's half dead, but it's half alive, and you're gonna get into some of those kinds of issues. We're all familiar with the tree, and I'll wrap it up here. But you look at it and you go, that tree's gonna blow down in the next storm, and it's there forever. It outlasts you. And then we all also see trees that are perfectly healthy just get uprooted in a thunderstorm that rolls through in 10 minutes. So it's not an exact. Some things are exact. There's other things that are guesswork, and it just puts us in a very difficult position. I think if we look to expand our purview over private trees much more than what we're currently doing. We might be able to button down and bolster those regulations some without necessarily expanding the scope of our purview.
Okay.
Can I just say that it only, the ordinance reads only in cases of public safety or to prevent the spread of disease. That's it. That's all that's in there. We're going through that.
Yeah, that's good.
For the next section, 130-35, you say we have to change, you know, is there a word we can use besides misdemeanors? Or maybe that's something you can rewrite, or however you want that done. That's not, I think that's out
Well,
of our.
to have all these civil
Yeah.
infraction things, it has to be a civil infraction.
Okay.
And that's kind of a big question, because this city, I don't think we've decriminalized anything other than our traffic violations. So all our ordinance violations across the board, with the exception of common traffic violations, are misdemeanors. And when they are misdemeanors, we are limited by our charter as to what we can prescribe as penalties. And it's basically up to $500 fine and or 90 days in jail. So that was really one of my comments there. My other comment is I thought we had another section already later in the ordinance. I think it was just a couple sections down that already addressed penalties and also requiring replacement of illegally removed trees, which you definitely are going to want to have. I just thought that these provisions were added. They clearly came from another ordinance that was taking a much different approach toward enforcement.
Our intent would be that any violation here would be handled as similarly to the way that Berkley handles currently things like not having your lawn mowed.
Right, and that's what I'm.
And so if there's a word we should use to describe that other than
No, I think the word is there. I think it's the words that were added that throw it a little out of kilter.
Okay, well, we can reword that.
But
So,
we can-
so just eliminate that whole section,
Yes.
essentially. Okay. As far as the tie-in, as far as the tree plan and all that, that gets tied into the site plan approval. So obviously that's gonna have to be something that we work
Yeah,
with
that
the.
can be done.
Yes.
My comment on those, what she's referring to, is requiring, you know, more information through a tree survey and other things in the ordinance. The proposed ordinance talks about a tree survey, but there's nowhere in this ordinance or any other ordinance where there is a trigger, where it says when this tree survey is required. And I think what was just suggested is really what would probably happen, is that you would want this tree survey submitted in connection with any project that requires site plan approval.
Okay.
In order to do that, then we'll have to, Tim McLean's in the audience there, we'd probably have to do a companion ordinance amendment in our zoning ordinance and our site plan requirements, where we would add another thing, a tree survey, that's required. So it's a separate, it can be done, it's just, it's a separate ordinance that would have to be done. And then the question would also be, do we require this just for the tree survey, just for commercial projects, because that's when site plans are required, or are we intending to break it down into, you know, we want a tree survey when an individual homeowner is doing something as well, because we don't require a site plan when an individual homeowner is, say, adding an addition to their house that might affect a tree. So we need to think about that. We may have to cover it a couple of different ways, but to make the trees, to implement the tree survey, we have to have an implementing ordinance that says when it's required. This ordinance does a really nice job of saying what's required in the tree survey. It just doesn't say when the tree survey should be required.
Mr. Mayor, I believe the intent is residential as well as commercial, and so planning is protecting as much of our urban forest as possible.
So there
that
may
whether
be-
it's administratively approved site plan for, like I say, residential construct, or whether it's a full landscape plan, or whether it supplements a full landscape plan to go in front of one of our bodies. But certainly, no matter what level it rises to, a tree plan or a tree survey should be in place during the approval
But
process.
the point remains the same. We may have to do one or more other ordinance amendments or tweaks to make that happen.
Okay.
Great. Okay. So we can get, we talked about that report, that you can pay for a copy, so it's available at the city clerk's office. Most of that stuff was all referring to construction.
Yeah, what we'll need to do with those, like the I forget the exact name, but the International
the
Agriculture
Yes.
Society or
Yeah.
whatever, if we are going to refer to those or use their standards in the ordinance, we're going to have to get and have available here at the city copies of those documents, and they have to be we'll have to have multiple copies that the public can see, and we'll have to make sure that as I don't know how frequently those are updated, whether they're like building codes that every couple of years they're completely redoing it, or whether the current one is the same one they've been using for 10 years. I don't know. I've seen them before, but I can't say they're bedside reading for me. Just
That's something
we
we can
can
ask
do
Judd
it, but
about.
we're going to have to make sure if we are referring to and using something as a standard, it has to either be built into the ordinance, which probably isn't practical and which would probably violate copyright laws, or we have to make sure that those documents or reference guides are available here at the city clerk's office for all to see.
And is that the tree board's responsibility, or is that?
It'd be available at city offices.
Okay.
Would be just another, implementation detail, and well, I doubt it'd be a huge cost, but just an additional cost item for implementation of this.
And my very last point would be about all this stuff about the noxious weeds. We don't deal with any of that. So all of that shouldn't be in any of your. That was from 2017. The copy must have been working from. So we're not dealing with any of that stuff at all. So
my principal
ours
comment
ended
with that was
1/30/44.
keep it separate and keep noxious weeds.
It's separate.
and,
It's definitely separate.
And
So-
not commingle them all.
Right, yes. So we just end at 130-44, I think is where we end. So just for future consideration, that's as far as we went with that. And we did take out all of that, the restrictions that were in there for trees that you brought up, Councilman Blanchard, as far as, you can't plant this distance and that distance, and it's just up to the DPW, and that's how we left it.
Okay.
So.
Basically, we worked with the city, and we tried to take the current practices and update the wording so it reflected them. And simplified some areas as well.
What we're doing is we're limiting our amount of trees we can plant in the city because we're putting gas lines underneath the sidewalk, so you can't plant any trees in what's now called the green belt anymore, because that's within 10 feet of the gas line. So we've eliminated all your green belt trees in the future if you're on a street where the gas line runs under the sidewalk.
So what the city currently does is, when a resident approaches the city to share in our program and wants to have it plant in their green belt, the city comes out and they survey it and they determine where it's going to be.
And they said no.
And so, no, they
No,
determine where it can be, and
Yeah, so our point is, the green belt is 8 foot wide,
but we don't have that 8-foot.
but the city's already come out and said you can't put a tree in your green belt because the gas line's under your sidewalk.
Well,
And it's gotta be more than 10 feet, and it's not. So, there's no new trees all the way down that one side of that one street. And any street that they're putting the gas line under the sidewalk in the future. You can't plant in the green belt.
All
ga-
that's
it's not
been
a gas
removed,
bill.
so it's up to the
Gas bill.
DPW.
Right.
Okay.
And if you have any other concerns or questions, we'd love to hear from you so we can present the newest copy to you soon.
All right, so we've gotten a lot of information. We got the questions from the city attorney. I think we've been able to address those. Not every member of council has been able to see the latest draft that I guess came out at some point today. So we will do that, but assuming that all can get checked and meets the standards, are we comfortable recommending this for a first reading at this point?
Yes, I am.
I'm not stumped.
Mr. Liaison? Councilmember Gavin.
Thank you, Your Honor. This maybe isn't, it dovetail back to the ordinance, but maybe just sort of a quick process question. I kind of want to get into the timeline a little bit from when a tree is identified as dangerous and needs to be removed to when that actually happens and how long that takes. And the only reason I ask, because there's certainly been a lot of residents that have contacted to say, you know, we want to make sure that we're preserving our urban forests, certainly as you had indicated, Councilmember Hennon. But I'm curious if there's any value added to, depending again how long it takes, to bringing the removal of a tree to the tree board, just for sort of review, maybe a loose sort of recommendation, and certainly with the final decision being made in consultation with the certified arborist, and then at city manager's discretion, or their designee. So, more just food for thought.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so it seems that council is prepared to move forward with the first reading. At the next meeting, we'll make all the changes. We'll certainly be in contact. Thank you for all of your time and hard work and everything. I know there was a lot of conversation this morning and a lot of emails getting fired back and forth, and we're happy that it was able to happen and we can move forward.
Knock on wood.
I'm enforcing a very strict no pun rule the rest of the evening, especially with another agenda item a little bit later. We'll now reconvene our regular meeting. Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 6 on tonight's agenda?
Motion number M5318, matter of authorizing the mayor to approve a sponsorship agreement between Vibe Credit Union and the city of Berkeley during the contract period of July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019.
Is there a motion to approve M5218?
Motion to approve.
Support.
Motion approved by Councilmember Dean with support from the Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Baumgart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I only note that this is an annual item. Vibe Credit Union has been a great partner with us thus far, and they worked very closely with the Parks and Rec Department, and Teresa McCarlton has some additional information for you.
So we're very fortunate that this is the 8th year we're bringing this to you. Vibe has been a great community sponsor. It is a contract. We've had a couple changes in the past 2 years. This year we went back to more traditional contract where they'll be sponsoring shirts for our summer and winterfest events, also for our summer camp. So their logos are on that. It's a good thing for them, a good thing for us. It helps us to support those events. All of our Summerfest and Winterfest activities are free to anyone who comes, and then also goes towards advertising that they do in our buzz, which also helps us to present the buzz to all the residents 3 times a year. So it's pretty straightforward. We appreciate all of their support, and they really are a great partner with us in presenting community events.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions from council? As Ms. Carlton mentioned, this is has been, fortunately, an annual item. Mentioned a couple of changes into the contract, but we are always happy to accept donations from our local businesses. Questions?
I just wanted to just confirm with the city attorney that he did review this, so.
And yes, I did, and Ms. McCarlton and I, she always sends it over, and we've discussed it, and as she said, it's done this 8 times. It hasn't changed a whole lot.
And I just want to note, the contract you have in front of you was not signed. We were waiting to get a signed contract back, and we did get it back today from Vibe, so with our control, it'll be complete.
Councilmember Hennon?
Yeah, and this question is more for the city manager, I think, and it isn't specific to this contract, just a general interest question. Are people able to make tax deductible donations to the city?
Yes, they are. Actually, the IRS does allow tax-deductible donations to local government so long as it contributes to a public purpose. And so if anybody wants to do that, we are here.
Thank you.
Those
before tax time.
contributions are allowed, but they're kind of rare because most people believe they make their contribution through their taxes.
But we're always open for more.
Exactly.
Okay. Seeing no problems with VIBE donating to the community, Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll on M 5218?
Stedman?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Blanchard?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
Gavin?
Yes.
Hennan?
Yes.
And Turbrack.
Yes. Thank you, Teresa, and thank you, VIBE. Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 7 on tonight's agenda?
Motion number M5418, matter of considering an application to hold the County Oakland Irish Fest event from Friday, September 7th, 2018, from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Saturday, September 8th, 2018, from 10 a.m. to 12 a.m. The event will be held on 12 Mile Road between Tyler Avenue and Kipling Avenue, hosted by the County Oakland Irish Fest, 2886 12 Mile Road, Berkley.
Is there a motion to approve R 5418?
Motion to approve.
Support. Councilmember Stedman with support. Was that Councilmember Gavin? Mr. Baumgarten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the third annual County Oakland Irish Festival, still in the same place. It's going to be once again featured on 12 Mile with a little section there on Robina as well. On across the couple of days, they're going to be holding the event. This application has gone in front of all appropriate departments. You'll see there's notes from Public Safety as well as Public Works, as well as the Community Development Department. Your application materials are included in there. The little bit changed this year. County Oakland Irish Fest is in itself a nonprofit organization that has been set up. They formerly worked with the Ancient Order of Hibernians. They have now are going at their own, and so that's a little bit of a change from the year previous. Other than that, the layout doesn't change a whole lot. They have submitted the map with their important locations. They've submitted information that they have satisfied the sign-off requirements from the nearby businesses, and also there's notations from the appropriate departments included in your packet. So you'll see it is complete. There's an item that is outstanding, and that is they're also working with the American Legion, the local outpost here in Berkley. They will be coming back to the city for approval of an alteration of their liquor license in order to hold have a beer tent at this party. But that's the one part that's not located in this. They do have to we do ask that the applications come to us 45 days in advance of the event itself, so that we have time to notify the road commission of any pending road closures with the local government body's approval. So that's one of the reasons why you're seeing this now instead of not closer to the event itself.
Thank you. Questions? Is there a member here? Perfect. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Peggy Spilker. I am on the board of this County Oakland Irish Festival. I am filling in here tonight for Dale Goodcourage and Phil O'Dwyer, and I can answer any questions. At least I can try.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councilmember Blanchard.
Thank you, Your Honor. One of the
Sorry,
things.
Peggy.
What?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
One of the things that we need yet, and it's not incumbent on the approval of this, is I see that there's unidentified food trucks, and what we need as soon as possible to find out who the food trucks are and whether they have propane on board, because that becomes a fire hazard, and we have to do certain inspections, and we like to locate them in certain areas where they're safe. So every year there's more and more requirements to make this safe. So I'll be talking to Dale too about that.
Yeah, I know he has reached out to the person who was getting all those, and we're trying to get that information. We don't have all of our vendors and food trucks in yet, so we weren't going to have. I think we're only going to have like 4 or 5 of the food trucks. I'm not sure, but
he showed 4 on the marked up map that he sent back.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, that's good.
Okay. I guess you had it easy. Good job.
That's it?
Nice. Seeing no additional questions, sounds like we are ready to move this forward. Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll on R 5418?
Is that M 5418?
Sure, M 5418. Whichever one you want.
Baker?
Yes.
Blanchard?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
Gavin?
Yes.
Hennan?
Yes.
Stedman?
Yes.
And Turbrack.
Yes.
Thank you.
M 5418 has been approved. Sure. Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 8 on tonight's agenda?
Motion number M 5518, matter of considering an application to hold the Celtic Warrior Run on Saturday, September 8, 2018, from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. The route will begin on 12 Mile Road for the Social Connections LLC, doing business as Ultimate Fun Runs and County Open Irish Fest, 23315 Woodward Avenue, Ferndale.
Is there a motion to approve M 5518?
Move to approve.
Approved by Councilmember Gavin with support by Councilmember Dean. Mr. Baumgarten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a new item that now goes along with the County Oakland Irish Fest. They'll have a Celtic Warrior Run, which is a 5K run walk. Like the previous item, the application materials have been included in your packet, as well as any review letters and notations from the appropriate departments. That includes public safety, building and planning, public works, parks and rec, and the city clerk and my office. And so you'll see the route map is also included in there, as well as the proposed traffic control order, because part of this does include crossing 12 Mile, a county-owned road, but the bulk of it is going to happen within the city's own local road network.
Okay. Thank you. You seem eager to talk. What can you tell
I
us?
just know if you had any
Oh,
questions.
yeah, no, sure. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Great. My name's Regina Stocco. I'm the owner of the Social Connection. We've been hosting runs for 4 years. We've hosted successful runs in Royal Oak, Ferndale, Dearborn. Some of our runs are somewhere around 1,000. We're expecting about 300 to 500 people for a first-year run. We're really excited about it. We've already got some initial branding. If anyone's interested, it's going to be family-friendly. We'll have some kids' runs. And the spot where we'll be crossing 12 Mile will be where the 12 Mile is already closed. So it's a designated spot that the police department had recommended, and should be a lot of fun people. Hopefully they'll get a Guinness at the finish line, all that fun Irish stuff. So.
Excellent.
Better after than before, I'm assuming.
Right, 21 and over, of course. So.
Oh. Excellent. I know I have talked with Dale, and he's very excited about this as well, and mentioned the support that you already mentioned, roughly somewhere between 300 to 500 people that are anticipated to be here for the run. Are there additional questions from Councilmember Blanchard?
Thank you, Ron. Just a quick one. On the route map, you got labels 1, 2, and 3 on there. What do those mean?
Those are water stations.
But you've also got water stations, other water stations.
Oh,
You don't have 5 water stations, I don't think.
oh,
on
those are the
5K.
mile mark. I'm sorry, that's
Oh, those
like
are okay.
the mile markers versus the 5K. So that's where
Okay.
that's at. Sorry,
Thank
I
you.
didn't design the route. The running company did. So.
Mr. Mayor, this being a new event, we did discuss with the applicant the need for notifying those households along the route, so they're aware of the event day of.
Our plan for that is we'll do yard signs, and it'll just let people know that this street will be on a run for the date and time, and that the road will still be open to local traffic, so that you won't have a lot of people calling and complaining about road closures. We'll also have about 30 to 60 volunteers, depending on exactly how many spots the Department of Public Safety feels would be required for this, to make sure that just the traffic entering in where the runners are happening are at least timed, so that everyone stays safe on the road. So.
Excellent. Thank you.
We usually use the Berkley rugby team, and we've had some of the track team here, and we do donations for the volunteers and whatnot. So.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions for Regina? Councilmember Stedman.
I have a question here on the application. It says September 7th, 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. and September 7th and 8th, Rubina only.
That's
10
the
to
Irish Fest, not the
12.
run.
The Irish Fest is on a Friday?
Well, the Irish Fest is Friday and Saturday.
Friday
the
and
run is
Saturday.
Saturday morning.
Okay.
So it kind of
Okay.
dovetails
Okay,
into that.
the way it's typed here, it looks like it says the 7th and 8th is just Robina North.
Oh, okay.
So, okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, we're doing well. Thank you, Regina,
Sure.
for being here. Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll on M 5518?
Blanchard.
Yes.
Dean.
Yes.
Gavin.
Yes.
Hennan.
Yes.
Stedman.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
And Turbrack.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 9 on tonight's agenda?
Motion number M5618, matter of considering an application to hold the Made in the Mitten Festival event on Saturday, August 11, 2018, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. The event will be held at the Berkley Community Center and the Ice Arena parking lot for the Made in the Mitten Store, LLC, 706 South Washington Avenue, Royal Oak.
Hi.
Hold on one
Sorry,
second.
go
Nope, sorry. Is there a motion to approve M 5618?
So moved.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem.
Support.
Support by Council Member Dean. Very quickly first, Mr. Baumgarten.
Yes,
before we
sir.
Throw this over.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It would be a new event for the city of Berkeley. It is proposed to be held at the rec center as well as the former Ice Arena parking lot. As you see, it's just if held, it would be just a couple weeks away. Same week as our Dream Cruise event. It's been reviewed again by the appropriate departments. As we went through, we took a look at the application, the setup, the materials. This being a new event, we did review this very closely. There are some apprehensions from staff and from our administrative departments. Public safety has no issue with it. As always, community development reviewed it, and vendors must pass inspections. There is an issue with providing with electricity at the site. Our exterior electrical outlets aren't functioning at this time, and so we would not be able to provide any electricity to the exterior portions of this. Again, like I said, it's somewhat short lead time for the event itself, and let's see, there are staff emails have been included in your packet as well. And so, all in all, there are, again, like I say, some apprehensions that would need to be answered by the applicant tonight.
Okay, you're on.
All right. My name is Colleen McClue, and I own Made in the Mitten, which is a retail business in downtown Royal Oak. I was approached by the DDA. I initially came to the city trying to rent Berkeley High School's parking lot back in April to hold this event. I am a Berkeley High School student graduate. I thought it would be really nice to bring an event like this kind of back to the city. Even though my business is in Royal Oak, you think I would go there, but I thought it would be nice to come here. I remember being a kid and not having too many family events to look forward to, staring out the window of Anderson Middle School, waiting for Berkeley Days to happen, and that being pretty much it. So I know that now we do have quite a bit of family events that happen. I've taken place with the Berkeley Art Bash with my own business for the last 8 years, so I'm kind of very familiar with how art bashes and festivals are put on and what needs to happen to make them run smoothly. I've been doing them for about 10 years now. So it was my idea. I've held Made in the Mitten events before. Those have been in Royal Oak prior. I thought it would be great to have it in Berkeley, like I said. My initial plan and application was actually to have it on Coolidge Highway between Catalpa and Wiltshire, because we typically bring at least 100 vendors that are all Michigan artists or businesses that make their own products or sell their own Michigan-made goods. But that did not work out with the road closures and the time. So my application has actually been modified probably about 3 times now, and that's why we are at the Ice Arena location. We think that that's the best location for the first time event for this. It's a smaller area. We don't need any roadblocks. I have a pretty big team of volunteers that will be taking care of making sure there's no garbage, cleaning up the location during, after, before, setting up, you name it. So I feel pretty confident, especially with my 10 years of not only participating in the events but putting them on, that I can bring a good family-friendly event to here. I will need to figure out something, I guess, with the electricity, because we do intend on having a small bounce house for children, which will be located on the grass so that it can be anchored down and it's safe. And so I will need to try to figure something like that out, whether I need to bring a generator or however that works. I will make sure to follow the appropriate channels for that. And in regards to our food trucks that we could or could not have, I did meet with Mr. Blanchard and discuss that as well. We will be putting those towards the entrance, so my initial map will change. I had them initially at the very back of the parking lot, which proposed kind of a safety issue, so we would be putting them closer to the front instead. That is if we are able to secure them, because we are kind of close to the deadline here. Some people may not be able to participate with the food trucks. Initially, like I said, the event was supposed to be for May 11th, and so we have been pushed back now, and so now we're at August 11th, which kind of doesn't give too much time to our vendors, but they have been filled in. Anyone that's applied for this event has been filled in every step of the way, and they're still ready and willing to participate and ready to go. So they will all be signing waivers as well, each vendor, stating that the city and me and the Mitten is not liable if they trip and fall or, you know, anything like that happen, any kind of issues that they cannot bring. There should be an example of the contract, hopefully, in your literature, but just, you know, basic guidelines. You can't bring any candles or fire or anything like that. And I will be notifying the surrounding residents as well, like the Irish Fest, of the event, and letting them know that that area around there in Oxford may get a little hectic with the parking, so, if approved, obviously. And I'm here for any questions.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Additional questions from council members? Questions or feedback or input? Councilmember Hennan.
If you aren't able to secure power in time, will you still be able to put the event on?
Yeah, the event technically does not require power. The vendors come and they set up in 10 by 10 tents. It's during the day. We don't really need that. The event will also take place inside of the Parks and Rec building, though, as well. So, I mean, we will have some power technically in there, but for the most part, no. The food trucks come with their own generators typically, so that's kind of taken care of if we are able to secure them. And then the only downside really would be that we wouldn't have that bounce house kind of fun area for the kids, which would be a bummer, but that wouldn't make or break necessarily. I think I would just kind of up the kids' activities that we would be bringing instead. We do a make and take craft section for kids we have cut out Michigan outlines. They're able to decorate and take home with them, or they can leave them and we hang them up in our store. So I would just kind of probably add a bunch more children activities, maybe some face painting, things like that, instead of bringing the bounce house if we cannot secure electricity.
And how many vendors are you expecting?
Well, now that we're on such a smaller scale, this is a juried event. So I have over 100 vendors that have applied for this, and normally we have closer to 300 to 400 vendors apply for our events, but because I kept having to push the date back and no one really knew what was going on, not as many people applied for this event. Moving forward in the future, if this goes well and the Street Art Fest goes well with the closures on Coolidge, I would like to see it come back and be in a much bigger scale on Coolidge with a year's worth of planning and not how it's kind of happened this time. So luckily, if we do it in that sense, I think we would have anywhere from, it'd be very similar to the Berkley Art Bash. It's extremely similar setup.
And then how do you plan on notifying the residents in the area?
I would be doing the lawn signs as well. I think that would be the most appropriate. I kind of hate spam. I don't really want to go door to door with a piece of paper and have it become litter. So I think that would be the best case, and that's something that my business does anyway. We print lawn signs, so I can kind of do that easily. I think that would be the best way.
Okay. I think maybe we work with staff to make sure we hit the right areas that events at the community center
Absolutely.
Yeah, actually, it's, again, we come back down to our apprehension being that we are, 20-something days out. And so trying to build awareness for that in the midst of the city's Dream Cruise event, which certainly takes a lot of the focus of most of our other events away from new things. Again, that's another point of apprehension.
And I was going to ask for staff, other than the power, are there other apprehensions? Do you need conditions that will make it more palatable? Are there other things we can do?
The provision of volunteers, do you have a locked-in number of dedicated individuals
I have 12
that travel
right now.
with you?
Yeah, I have 12 right now. And that can get bigger if I need it to be. That could be 20 more of my family and friends that I need. It just depends on once we get a better number of people that we think are going to be there, and after because we're going to be doing a very hard push on advertising basically over the next 2 weeks, right, to make sure that this event does have a good success and the city and the residents know and that they're able to take place in it. So once I kind of get a better idea based on our Facebook event and, just some general feedback from vendors, then I can always add more people, definitely, and that's on me, and I will take care of that. So the goal for us is to have enough volunteers where the city departments don't need to worry about it. We're not having road closures. We don't want anyone to have to come and clean up. It's the week before Dream Cruise, so we know things are hectic. And so the goal is for us to make this as simple as possible, have a fun event, have it totally clean at the end, and then that's it.
Yeah, that was certainly one of the notes is any exterior
Yep.
event, the trash that's produced, the need to have that cleaned up before it blows into the neighborhoods. Just making sure that there is actually a volunteer base in place to get
Absolutely.
things like that done.
I'm a Berkley resident. I'd be
I know.
infuriated if I
I know.
had a bunch of trash on my lawn after that. So I will definitely be making sure that that is taken care of.
Any additional questions, Councilmember Blanchard?
Thank you, Your Honor. How much of the community center are you going to use? I thought at first it was all just going to be outside, but you're going to use some inside?
Yeah, we are paying a fee of $750 to rent the community center, and that will, from what I understand, that is the entirety of the inside. I'm not sure if that includes the one, I think that does include the small room as well, for our vendors to be able to take a break and sit down for a second maybe. We do tend to have some older people that do the crafts and whatnot, and sometimes if it's hot out, they need to go sit down, they need to take a break. So I wasn't told exactly if that room was included, but I do know that we're renting the large room.
Got the answer right behind you.
Right behind you.
I emailed that I sent, and I don't know if you saw the email. I know there were emails back and forth. I sent to Annette, and then it would be it's for the multipurpose room, which includes the kitchen and the large meeting room. So there is a room that people can sit down.
Okay.
In. So it's those two rooms.
Okay.
And that's that is the resident rate that we charge for rentals whenever the building. We just have the one staff member that's in there. And their job is just filling the bathrooms.
Okay. There you go.
My other concern is the development of the event plan, which falls on me, and
Right.
it's a really short time because we're right now working on the Cruise Fest and the Dream Cruise plan, so it's going to be a real short notice and real hectic.
You have another comment?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Councilmember Blanchard, do you think you have enough time?
It won't be a super good plan, but it'll be a plan. What you have to do, the intent of the plan is for the people that are running the event and in managing it, you have to do in all situations.
Sure.
Any lost persons, suspicious persons, persons with weapons, bomb threats, all of that stuff. So we have to get it to you, and you have to train all your people so they know what's in it and how to respond in a short time. So it's going to be a cut and paste off the one of the Berkley days that was there, and see what we can put together, I guess.
I was able to look at Mr. Blanchard was able to visit me at my store, and I was able to kind of go through the binder with him and get familiar with the information and what we needed to get prepared for. And I do feel confident that if the binder is created or if I work with him, that I can train these people and have them go over it, because if it passes tonight, I can schedule that meeting for whenever an appropriate time would be for all of those people to get together, read over it, make sure everybody understands exactly what to do and what the goal is, and then move forward. I do know that it's a quick thing, you know, a quick event, but I do feel very confident that I can make it work and make it work well.
And you did tell me you expect, you know, the planning figure was 1,000?
Yeah.
1,000 people.
That's our goal. We had close to 10,000 people at our holiday market, which was in Royal Oak Farmers Market. Now, that is Christmas time and nowhere near the same kind of turnout that I would expect for any sort of outdoor, small August event. So my realistic goal and idea of amount of people would be 1,000 people.
Councilmember Sedman?
How many vendors would you guess that you're going to have outside in the parking lot?
It really depends. I have to physically go to the parking lot unless I have a map that outlines the square footage of that parking lot. I need to see how many 10 by 10 spaces can actually fit where you have enough clearance safety-wise in between the rows of vendors as well. So I would say, based on the layout that I had at the Royal Oak Farmers Market, which was also in their parking lot, it's a pretty similar size, and we had 40 vendors. And plenty of room to walk, strollers, wheelchair accessibility. So I would say a safe bet would probably be around 40 vendors outside, and then the inside vendors are just seated at a 6-foot table, so you could probably fit another 20, maybe 25 vendors in there. You don't want people uncomfortable. And again, room for wheelchairs, strollers, families, period. So I would say a total of maybe at most 75 vendors, and that would probably be pushing it. I think it'll probably be closer to 50 to 60.
My biggest concern is the parking situation for visitors there.
Sure.
And also where the vendors will park.
Yeah, our only parking that's, you know, directly given to us obviously is in the Parks and Rec parking lot, which I'm not exactly sure how many spaces are in there. I'm not sure if she knows that man either, but there's about 70. Okay, yeah. So we would instruct our vendors to not use those parking. Normally with any kind of art fair or anything like that, you come, you set up your space, and you immediately remove your car to another location, even if you need to walk 3 blocks to get there, because you want to allow for your visitors and your customers to be the first ones to get those spaces and to actually go shop and enjoy the time. So we would need to figure out a better route, or possibly ask maybe the Berkley schools if it was possible to have people park in the parking lot there and walk, you know, have them walk back or something along those lines. But otherwise, it would wind up being the vendors parking on the street and then allowing the customers to park in the Parks and Rec building.
And you might want to check with Anderson Middle School to make sure they don't have an event going on that same day.
Okay. As far as I know, no, but I will double check, definitely.
Councilmember Dean?
I'm just looking at the, excuse me, certificate of liability insurance.
Yes.
Do you have an updated one happening?
I do. I don't have it with me at the moment. I will have insurance for the event itself. It's an event insurance plan. And then I also have, my insurance just auto renews. So I just need to get the new certificate, and that will also list the city of Berkley as, you know, someone on the certificate as well, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I don't want to vote no, but I will be voting no. I want this to be successful, and I'm afraid with this rushed approach, we won't be able to be successful. This event won't be able to be a success. I definitely want to encourage you to come back another time. And I don't know what the thoughts of the rest of the council. You may very well get approved still, but my thinking is no. There are just too many unknowns at this close of a stage that I'm not comfortable to vote yes for this.
I totally respect that. I will tell you that this event has been in planning since April, though. So even though it has gone from Wiltshire, you know, on Coolidge to a smaller scale, the event in itself has been completely planned out, and now it's just changing location. So the whole team and the system and everything has already been in place for, you know, 4 or 5 months now. It's really just a matter of changing the location. And honestly, it'll probably be easier because it's going to be on a much smaller scale than it was doing an entire street art fest, you know, on a much bigger scale.
I did send you some area
Yes,
pictures?
I
Did
did
you
see
got
that, yeah.
those?
Mhm.
Those
They're
would be
very
helpful if you could
very
start
helpful, yeah.
populating those so we would know what's going on, because I like Dennis, I'm very concerned.
Sure.
Because I have to, from the safety end of it, we've got to make sure everybody's safe, the people that are attending, the people that are working, and the vendors themselves have to be safe, and we've got to get a
Absolutely.
good, safe layout of that. So that's my major concern.
I do have one more question, actually. If this were to be an issue of timing and we just needed to simply change the date, is that something that I would be able to do now, or is that something I have to refill out an entire different application? I'm only concerned just because it's just me doing this, and I'm not made of money, I gotta be honest. So I already spent the $300, to do the application and whatnot, so I didn't know if it would be like a whole nother thing, or a matter of just making another appointment to get a different date. I'm just not sure about the details on that, so.
From a process standpoint, we could merely amend the existing application
Okay.
on the table.
Okay. That was my big concern.
Additional questions, thoughts on this?
Based
Is-
on that, I would recommend that we move it to a different time. This is a very tough time for the city, the DPW, everybody that's getting ready for the Dream Cruise and the Cruise Fest. So it's really short notice. I'd like to see it some other time. I'd like to see it, but
Okay. Our council members, before we call the vote? Okay, and I guess. Were you gonna say something?
No.
Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll on M 5618?
Dean?
No.
Gavin?
Yes.
Hennan?
No.
Stedman?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Blanchard?
no.
Turbrack?
Yes.
Is that a yes?
Is a yes.
Yes, thank you.
Ayes have it.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yes, even though it voted, we did approve it. There are very serious concerns with the amount of time. This is not a lot of time. With Dream Cruise, probably could not be a worst possible week for this to happen. I do understand that you've been planning for a while and had to change some other things, which is why I voted the way that I did. I think it could be a great event for the city, but timing-wise, not good. Not good. It's okay. It's approved. Let's move on, Ms. Boucher. Would you please read item number 10 on tonight's agenda?
Ordinance number 00818, matter of considering the first reading of an ordinance to amend Chapter 138 zoning, Article 5, Division 14, 11 Mile District of the Berkeley City Code ordinances regarding outdoors automobile sales.
Is there a motion to approve 00818?
Move to approve.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Gavin with support from Councilmember Blanchard. Mr. Baumgarten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Included in your packet is a memorandum written by our Community Development Director, Tim McLean, outlining some of the proposed differences, and also included is the draft ordinance language. This has been through the process. The Planning Commission has examined this, has taken a look at some of the issues that they've had over the last couple of years now, actually dating back to prior to myself and Mr. McLean's time here. But some of the issues we've had with outdoor auto sales, our current ordinance prohibits the sale of any items without being placed behind a masonry wall. Car dealerships are zoned by rights in the 11-mile district, so we end up with this sort of odd situation where certainly you can sell your vehicles, just make sure nobody sees them. And so the Planning Commission went through a thoughtful process, proposed an amendment where this then becomes a special land use in the 11-mile district, but with very specific provisions in place to keep this from being a sort of eyesore, if you will. And then also, in a sense, an earshore as well, because it also prohibits the use of PA speakers. The 6 bulleted points that are required for the outdoor display of automobiles, the 4 of them are included in your packet there. 6-foot walls will still be required, but that's in the areas where they abut the residential property. On the 11-mile district, that is the rear of the property. The vehicles displayed outdoors shall be in good repair. We obviously don't want somebody who is in the middle of repairing a vehicle to display it out front. We've got issues with that in other portions of the city and don't want to create a new problematic situation. As I mentioned, outdoor loudspeakers will not be allowed. It's just.
So it shall be, that was my
Yeah.
first question.
Shall not be permitted is the missing word there, Mr. McLean, correct?
Sir.
Shall not be permitted. I want to clarify that. It is correct in the ordinance text.
Yeah.
And then there'd be a minimum size of building requirement, so it can't be a little shack with a bunch of cars sitting around it, so. Mr. McLean, anything to add?
Nothing unless city council has any questions for me.
Questions regarding our automobile sales? Okay.
Just a general question. Thanks for your work with this. It's good to make sure that we clarify these kinds of unintended consequences of some of the ordinances we have. Some auto sales companies also provide an auto service function where if you have an issue with your car, you can bring it back. Is there any implications of servicing a vehicle, or is that already covered elsewhere? You know, I didn't do the cross-reference to see how vehicle service would align with this. Is there anything we need to think about, or is that already sufficiently covered if they were to both sell and serve vehicles to their customers?
To be displayed openly, they have to be in good condition, and I think there are specific conditions that outline what make them suitable for display. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Sure. I was more referring to, just to be clear, and it could be another topic for another day. So I buy my car, it's great. Now I've got to get an oil change, or I got to have the tires rotated or whatever, and I sometimes would bring it back to the dealer. So is this a situation where would there be any impact to this if the seller were to also provide routine service and maintenance of the vehicles that they had previously sold? That was the nature of my question.
My apologies. In kind of going over quickly in my head, I don't think we'd be in a situation where we were prohibiting those from being on site. It shouldn't impede the dealer's ability to perform that service.
Right, because we do that elsewhere within the city, vehicle maintenance and stuff. I just wasn't sure if there was any implications for this work affecting that. Okay.
No, it merely depends on the severity of the damage to the vehicle. Like I say, if they go beyond sure, we'll change your oil, we'll balance your tires, but if they also provide a service where your bumper fell off, sorry about that, we'll make sure we fix it right this time. The vehicle can't be out displayed missing any parts.
Thank you, I like that.
Also, note, the Planning Commission held the public hearing on June 26th, and there were no comments, additional comments for or against, so. Seeing no further comments, Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll on 0818?
Gavin?
Yes.
Hennan?
Yes.
Stedman?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Blanchard?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
And Turbrack.
Yes. So we continue on the ordinance parade. Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 11 on tonight's agenda?
Ordinance number 00918, matter of considering the first reading of an ordinance to amend Chapter 22, Animals, Article 4 of the City of Berkeley Code of Ordinances related to keeping of chickens.
Is there a motion to approve 00918?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Councilmember Dean with support from Councilmember Stedman. Mr. Baumgart, be careful what you say.
Yes, sir. Yes. This item is coming back to council with some of the changes that we discussed at the last meeting. Of course, we're eliminating the mention of a pilot project or a pilot program. The limit to 5 permits remains. So that is still the law of the land under this proposed ordinance. One other item I want to bring your attention to is on the section 22-93. We did run into some issues with actually placing the coop inside the property. And so by requiring it to be 10 feet from all accessory structures, we found that sometimes that either pushed it way too far back and put it in the public view of maybe the neighbor or right in the center of the yard. So what we're proposing is to basically treat this like a dog run or an animal kennel and allow it to abut an accessory structure like a garage, tucks it away a little bit, keeps it out of public sight from the neighbors as much as possible, and keeps it from being, like say, an eyesore or anything like that. So it keeps it from being a visual obstruction to the yard itself. And those are the only 2 changes. pun-free.
Thank you. Additional, obviously, we talked about this the last time we talked about these. Additional questions or changes to this? Mr. Attorney?
I would recommend one word change in the section that the city manager was just referring to, 22-93, in D, where the additional language has been added. Instead of saying or may be raised, I would recommend it say or shall be raised, so that that's mandatory, not permissive. What we're saying is you have to either have the rat wall or block foundation, or else you need to raise it a foot. So it should say shall rather than may.
Yep, and that's a step towards making it its cleanliness.
Okay.
That was the only thing that I had flagged.
Okay. Councilmember Blanchard?
That whole section there is new, isn't it? That was just added in this one?
Yes.
That
was not in the
portion of the
previous-
sentence, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Any additional questions or comments with this? Again, we had talked about the pilot, the results from that. We only had one I'm aware of. We did not
We're
have any
actually
problems.
joined by the
Sierra?
loan permit holders this evening.
I believe there are 2 permit holders currently.
Did we get another one approved?
They're waiting for your decisions this
Yeah,
evening
I
to
didn't think that.
permanently
Yeah,
placed.
I didn't think we'd approved more than one so far.
I just was unclear on your change of verbiage and wanted to see how that applies specifically to the types of coops. I was unclear on what you had brought up, so I was hoping we could go over that one more time.
I was just changing one word, but let me flip back to it. It's a recommended change from the existing ordinance, where the existing ordinance requires that all chicken coop structures, coops or pens, must be constructed and maintained with a rat wall or similar block foundation. The language has been added, or shall be raised
That
a
does make
minimum
sense,
of 1
yes.
foot off the ground.
Because quite a few people do operate with a raised coop rather than
Right,
a.
and so this change would be allowing that, whereas the existing ordinance does not.
I appreciate your clarification. I think that does make a lot of sense. Thank you very much.
Oh, and just to let everybody know, we do have a second applicant for chicken permit, and we likely have a third one that's going to be submitting an application very soon as well. So we're getting close to our quota of 5.
Okay. Thank you.
Could I just expound on that a little bit? There was some miscommunication since the recent article in the Woodward Talk regarding our status on chickens. Quite a few people have come forward. A couple of things going on during our pilot program. Most people aren't aware, there's only a few weeks during the year that a typical person is going to get chickens when they're chicks in the spring. I've had multiple people come to me saying, the way the pilot program was presented, they were under the impression that all 5 permits were already out, and that was the pilot. So in the last several weeks, many families have come forward expressing interest. I'm certain not all of them will come through with that, but we have seen quite a larger amount of people expressing interest due to the new information.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Hennon.
Yeah, my original opposition, and my opposition again tonight, was going to be the lack of interest. Hearing this, I am going to change to a yes vote. Regardless of whether it's yes or no, I would like us to, I don't want to encode this in the ordinance, but look again at it in 3 years and see where things stand. And, if we've had, complaints, as it expanded, if the new applicants have, continue to, show an interest, or if interest peters off after a while. So I've set a reminder for myself to, revisit this within 3 years. So.
Okay, excellent. Anything else? You guys all did a wonderful job before we, just hold on.
I heard that intake of breath.
I I know. I just feel like when there are all the puns, people don't think we're taking it seriously, and I feel like this is serious business, regardless of whether it's a chicken. All right, Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll on O0918?
Hennan,
Yes.
Stedman,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Blanchard,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
and Turbrack.
Yes. Thank you. Ms. Boucher, would you please read the next item on tonight's agenda?
Motion number M5718, matter of casting Berkeley's official vote for the Board of Trustees for the MML Workers' Compensation Fund, directing the city clerk to send in the marked ballot, vote for 3 incumbent trustees for 4-year terms beginning October 1st, 2018.
Is there a motion to approve M5718?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Councilmember Stedman.
Support.
Support from Councilmember Blanchard. Mr. Baumgarten, please tell us
Thank you, Mr.
about
Mayor.
our candidates.
As a league member, we do have a say in who represents us on the various boards. The city does take part in the Workers' Compensation Fund. We would be, I can tell you, I do know, personally, I know two of these people, the 2 city manager candidates, and we would certainly be well served by their presence on the body. But they've included a little bit about themselves, the candidates themselves. There is a nominating slate that they go through before it comes to the membership at large. So these are vetted individuals, many of whom have long tenures in helping municipalities ferry their way through some of these compensation issues. So we have been, I think, well represented up to this point, and there's no reason to think that we would not be with the proposed slate here.
So we have 3 candidates. We are supposed to vote for 3 people.
They do make it easy on us.
Unless anybody would like to write anybody in, I think we are all set. Or if there are anybody have any strong
Give
feelings?
Steve Baker another job.
No, thank you. Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll on M5718?
Stedman,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Blanchard,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
Hennan,
Yes.
and Turbrack.
Yes. Now come to communications. Who is up first?
Mayor Pro Tem?
Mayor Pro Tem.
Great, thank you. Just 1 or 2 quick things, because I don't want to ruffle any feathers here with
You
my
can do it now, it's fine.
communications. So.
You
Don't have
had
a
to do
problem.
it, didn't
We're
you?
out of the no pun zone.
So,
All this meeting is the no puns.
okay. So, back to the Downtown Development Authority for just a second to build on some of the information that was shared during citizens' comments at the onset of this meeting here by our DDA director. I want to congratulate everyone for the Art and About events. They continue to be very well received on the second Fridays of each month through the appropriate season here. It's a delight. And as mentioned, coming up later this week on Thursday, 5 to 9 is the Ladies' Night Out with over 20 participating businesses and venues opening their doors for an evening of fun, festivities, giveaways, indoor specials, and some of those Berkley totes as well. Those are fantastic. We'll also be having, related to our downtown and in particular Coolidge, there'll be some public input sessions to review the traffic analysis and the Coolidge Road design scheduled for coming up on Wednesday, July 25th. So that's Wednesday the 25th. There'll be 2 sessions based on your schedule. Hopefully you'll be able to attend one or the other. Same content in both sessions. One's from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and one is from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. So it's kind of a midday one and a after work one for those on a schedule like that. They will all be held at the Social Hall at Berkley First Methodist on 12 Mile. All of the information about the traffic study and the ideas and proposals for how we could positively transform Coolidge are available on the DDA's website, which is downtownberkeley.com. There's FAQs and information at the local, state, and federal level about the benefits of some of the ideas that we're working on these days. So encourage you to check that out, and please come to either or both if you're really into it, both of these sessions to learn more about the vision for what we could do with Coolidge. That is fantastic. And finally, it was Victor Hugo who once wrote, "The sewer is the conscience of the city." I'm taking that a little out of context, but I just want to again celebrate the progress that we're making and the information that we're sharing and growing about our sewer system, and the seriousness with which we're taking this to continue to ensure that we have the most resilient infrastructure that we can. All right, as noted in the presentation earlier in this session, not everything can prevent all storms and things like that from overflowing any system. But by having the right information, the right plans, the right investments, and proactive work, we can and will make a difference. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Councilmember Stedman.
Okay, the library, they have a lot of events planned between now and the end of July. And so I would urge you to check on the website to see what interests you and what is coming up next. The Beautification Committee is going to beautify the next bus stop, which is the one at Webster, where Webster would go through, on Woodward Avenue. And they're going to do this on August 12th at 10 a.m. The next meeting is August 8th. If anybody is interested in coming to the Beautification Committee meeting, we meet upstairs in Public Safety at 6:30. On the second Tuesday of the month, or second Wednesday of the month. The Community Engagement Committee has met 3 times already. They're working on information to be handed out regarding the 2 ballot issues. If you have any other ideas of how to communicate, how we can reach you personally, what is the best way to reach you, please let Jay Grossman know, or Natalie Price, who is the chairperson, or myself. And also, Saturday was a great day for the chalk art event. It was really wonderful. Nice weather, only rained a little bit, but the vendors seemed to be pretty happy. Or the chalk art artists, I should say, not vendors. But that's all. Thank you.
Councilmember Blanchard.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to comment a little bit about on the Street Art Fest and thank the vendors, the musicians, the chalk artists, and all the volunteers that made it happen, because it came off well. People had a lot of fun there. It was a good time. A little bit of rain, but don't worry about that. But a lot of volunteers pulled together and pulled it off, and it came off well. So thanks to everybody.
Councilmember Dean.
Congratulations again to Eagle Scout Eric Moran and the Friends of Berkley Parks and Rec. We have a lot of activities happening right now with Parks and Rec. The Summerfest event, the JC Jamboree, is on July 19th from 6 to 9 p.m. Face painting, ice cream, bouncers, tie-dye, and more fun will all be there at JC Park. Story time in the park is on August 2nd at 10 a.m. at Merchants Park. The next Summerfest event will be the outdoor movies at Oxford Merchants Park on August 11th. The fun begins at 6:30 with bouncers. That seems to be a theme, the bouncers. And a climbing wall. Stay for the movie, which begins at dusk, and enjoy popcorn and other goodies, or bring a picnic dinner to enjoy. Berkley Cruise Fest is August 17th. You can watch over 400 classic cars cruise down 12 Mile, and then stay for some great music, a street dance, food vendors, and more, all on 12 Mile in downtown Berkeley. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hennon.
Yes, so the Environmental Committee, they are laying out their plans for the coming year. They're looking to invite speakers to address various topics, to hold some community events. For example, they're considering a hazardous waste recycling day where we can drop off hazardous waste somewhere in Berkeley instead of having to take it to Sacra. The committee is also looking for ways that they can help and advise City Council, and they're really eager to help and do that part of their mandate. So if you have anything that they want, Council wants them to look at, please let me know, and I'll make sure that they get that. They don't have a July meeting. Their next meeting is August 23rd at 6:30 p.m. at the Public Safety Building. I also wanted to thank the tree board. They have been very patient and very diligent in their work on the tree ordinance, and I'm glad that we're almost there with that. The tree programming, program is ongoing. You can get a tree for your tree lawn for $115, which is planted, delivered, a really good deal. I know a lot of people worry about if the new tree is going to destroy their sewer. And if you put the right tree in the right place, that's not a concern. We've had tree board members volunteer to go out to residents' places, help them pick their tree, help them site the tree in a place that is not going to negatively impact their property. So, contact us if that's something you'd be interested in. The deadline is Friday, August 17th, same day as Cruise Fest, to get in for the trees. Their next meeting is August 13th at 7 p.m. at the library. And then finally, my next talk with Dennis is going to be Thursday, August 9th, 6 to 8 p.m., again at the library. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gavin.
Thank you, Your Honor. A very, very short report from me since everything at Planning Commission was on our agenda for tonight. So there's that. Coolidge Avenue Task Force did not meet in July, and so I also want to echo my colleagues' congratulations to the Street Art Fest. I thought it was a really fantastic event and a lot of fun to be a part of. So that's all for me. Thank you.
Would really like to continue the theme of thanking everyone who had a hand with Roseanne, Bridget, all the people that put together the Chalk Art Fest. My family and I just had such a great time. Got to pop into a lot of little stores. It was great to see Coolidge so active with people instead of vehicles, and hopefully that's the theme to come in the future. Do want to also give kudos to the Community Engagement Advisory Committee. As Councilmember Stedman said, they've already met 3 times in their short lifespan so far. One of them was actually an emergency meeting of sorts. They saw, a conversation on Facebook that was getting very active, very intense, and so pulled together the group to say, how do we weigh in there and how do we turn this into an advantageous situation for us? And so they have just snapped right to work. Natalie, Liz, the whole group, they're really taking the it's not anything to do with chickens, but bull by the horns, and fulfilling their mission, and they should be applauded for it. And last but not least, I want to thank everybody who was able to make it to my chat with Matt today. We tried a noon session, tried to get as many seniors together as possible. Attendance was light, so again, working with the CAC, we'll try to look for ways to get over the barrier of actually having to physically be in the room to hear some of this good information. So that'd be a great situation for the tech to weigh in on, and how do we bring the water to the proverbial horse to make it easier for it to drink. So, and that's all I have.
Okay. Ms. Boucher, do you have anything with primary coming up?
I do, actually. Thank you, Mayor. There is an election coming up. It's the Tuesday, August 7th primary election. The polls will be open at 7 a.m. and close at 8 p.m. Polling locations, Precinct 1 will be here at the City Hall in this council chambers. Precinct 2 is at Rogers Elementary School. Precinct 3 and 7 will be at the Berkley High School. Precinct 4 is at the Community Center. Precinct 5 is at Angel Elementary School. And Precinct 6 will be at Pattongill Elementary School. Also, we do have our AV Counting Board that will be up at the Public Safety Second Floor Conference Room. The AV ballots have gone out, and the residents or registered voters do have until the Saturday before election, which is Saturday, August 4th by 2 p.m. to get an absentee ballot. More information can be found on the city website. Thank you, Mayor.
No notes on the Election Commission meeting last week? Okay with that?
Unless you'd like to share that.
No, it was your meeting. I was just there. Okay. The ballots work. The machines work.
Yes.
One we tested worked, and we are ready. That's the important thing. Mr. Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, but nothing to report this evening.
I, too, would like to echo my colleagues' statements about the Street Art Fest. Not only was it a great event, but it's very rare for us to have that event on Coolidge and have Coolidge blocked off for something. It just typically has been 12 Mile, and I think it was very exciting to see how excited and energized and engaged the Coolidge businesses were, but the residents were, and people who maybe just travel through Berkley on Coolidge at higher rate of speed than we would like them to actually walk past and saw, oh, I didn't know that business was here. Oh, I didn't know that was here. It actually went into them. So that was, I talked to a number of business owners that were very happy with the traffic that they had as well. So again, all the volunteers, as Matt mentioned, put in a ton of time. Bridget, Roseanne, Darlene, Dan, McMahon, the whole crew that was out there, everybody, were a lot of volunteers. So it was a long day. It was a nice warm day. Got a little bit of rain. I also want to just congratulate the Dad's Club and the Moms Club. They have Berkley Dad's Club and the Moms Club came to the end of their regular season youth this week. The Dad's Club, I believe last Wednesday was the end of their World Series, and then Moms Club finished off on Saturday. Again, those two organizations do so much for the kids in the city, not only from the time that it takes them to organize, but again, the coaches that volunteer to help the kids and coach the kids. It takes a lot of time, and it's not, sometimes some kids are more difficult than others to deal with, like my daughters. And I appreciate everything that those organizations do for the city. It is very, very appreciated, and it's not easy to do. With that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Support. By Councilmember Stedman, with support from Councilmember Dean. Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll?
Baker?
Yes.
Blanchard?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
Gavin?
Yes.
Hennan?
Yes.
Stedman?
Yes.
And Turbrack.
Yes, the July 16th meeting is adjourned.